Jerusalema, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Jerusalema, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze, zuhambe nami. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze, dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze, zuhambe nami. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze, zuhambe nami. Jerusalema, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Jerusalema, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana.
Hi everyone, it is 10 o'clock by my watch. We are ready to start. My name is Phumintlapo. I am from the AGYI Foundation. I will be your host for today. We are so happy that you're able to join us. Lots more people still coming through, and it's going to be a great discussion. I hope you guys are safe and comfortable and happy where you are. I hope the music helped to set you on the right state of mind for learning, for engaging, for connecting, and really, really, really starting a dialogue that is necessary in South Africa, and that will hopefully lead to a lot more action. I'm going to take you through what we're going to be doing today, and really just, wow, the excitement. I love the song that we started with because it is just, for me, an uplifting song. It's a hopeful song. Today's discussion is going to be a positive one. We're not going to be dwelling on what has gone wrong. A lot has gone wrong. We're going to be going through what is going right.
We're not perfect, we're learning all the time, but life skills has been the thread throughout that so that we can create this emotionally well-rounded youngster. But then coming to the Youth Skills Development Program, we weren't sure how we could do it. But God had a plan, because we were able to buy an old dilapidated property in Sabron Park back in 2014. And that's a long story, which I go into in a whole chapter in my book, of how that journey took place to get us to be able to. But you know what? Through determination and hard work and prayer, we were able to build it. And now I'm proud to tell you that we have a thriving youth skills development program happening at the center in Sabron Park. Our first youth skills training program took place at the end of 2015. And that is very much taking these youngsters and putting them through programs to make them employable or to become entrepreneurs. So the children, the youth, since 2016, end of 2015 into 2016, can choose hospitality, our flagship, because that's the biggest market in Cape Town, especially in the hotels and the restaurants. So hospitality, sewing, craft and design, beauty and wellness, and you saw some of the lovely pictures in the waiting room. And then apart from the beauty and wellness, we introduced artisan skills a few years later. And then we developed to retail readiness. We realized there's a market for that. So we put together a very good retail readiness program. And then entrepreneurship. And Hillary, under her team, Hillary, who heads up the Youth Skills Development Program, and her committed and dedicated coordinators and facilitators take these youngsters through 3-month programs. They come on an orientation program, but it actually starts earlier than that when we call for applications. The team, Anele and Megan and the team, go through and really scrutinize all the applications, so that once we take these youngsters on board, we believe we've got a very good chance of placing them all in employment and getting their CVs done and putting them through. So ladies and gentlemen, that has been a remarkable journey, taking these youngsters.
Kevin, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. So if I look at the youth skills program, ladies and gentlemen, it's again, not just about the hospitality or the beauty and wellness. It's also equipping them with life skills that are going to take them into the workplace: business ethics, business etiquette, how to behave in the workplace, timekeeping, how to dress, how to carry yourself, how to be assertive and confident, which obviously we start in the after school programs. So those are the type of things that this team is doing, and it's seen the success. Over 800 students have been placed in employment in the last just over 4 years. And obviously it's important that we help them with their CVs, we give them interview skills. Partnerships again are essential. We have formed very strong partnerships with industry, the places where we're going to place, or the employers where we're going to place these students. And that has been a very important critical success factor, to form strong relationships where we can go to the Pick and Pays, the 12 Apostles, the Vineyards, the Clicks, and place these students. But then after that, it's tracking them and keeping in touch with them. I'm proud to tell you that many of them come back and give back to us. So that's a whole other very exciting part of our journey. But then a few years ago, back in 2018, we realized that there's a big gap missing. There's this gap called vocational skills training that we have to focus on between after school programs and the youth skills. And that's why we're here today, because we've been wanting to introduce the vocational skills training program for the grade 9s to grade 12s, so that we can bridge the gap. There's a huge gap. We see it when we take them into our programs. We see it why there's so much unemployment, because there's that gap in the senior years that we need to fill. So part of it is, ladies and gentlemen, we piloted it. It worked in the school holidays, and now we want to roll it out. So this is part of the research, the piloting in implementing a vocational skills training program. And we're looking to everybody, all of those who are attending today, to be part of putting together a very good vocational skills training program for the high school learners, which will involve exposing them to the type of careers that are out there, also getting them ready for the workplace readiness. So we're very excited, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is really from an NPO perspective of what needs to happen to tackle youth unemployment. It's a journey, it's a process from, youth, from the children and after school programs in primary school through to high school, vocational skills programs, and then youth skills developments and partnerships. So we are very excited about today. We're looking forward to the speakers. We're looking forward to everybody partnering with AGYI Foundation and each other to tackle this crisis, the scourge of unemployment, and give the youth hope. Because, ladies and gentlemen, as I started off with, South Africa can do it. We've shown it in the past. We need to tackle this youth unemployment, and it's NPOs like all of you that are joining today and others that can't be here to come together, work with government, work with business. Funding is difficult. We all know that. But we've got to be creative in how we look for the funding, how we fund these programs, and that's all part of it. But let's just be determined and committed to grow, to build, and tackle youth unemployment. So thank you for today. Thank you for the team that have put this together. Thank you to African German Youth Initiative for the opportunity and the support to enable us, the German Cooperation and Development Partners, the SA German Youth Conference, and we thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Pumi, and over to you.
Thank you, Kevin, our fearless leader. As Kevin says, we're really looking to partner. We started on this journey looking to see what this youth skills training program is going to look like. And we've come across so many people that are knowledgeable in this area, and some of them are speakers here today, and we're going to be engaging with them further. So this conference is really about partnership and about how do we all collectively take this forward. So just to follow on what Kevin was saying, we've got a video. Kevin, you can stop sharing your screen now. We've got a video that we've prepared just to emphasize what our journey has been, where we are hoping to go next with this, and why we're here. So Ilshan, if you can play that for us, please.
The AGYI Foundation has a history of working with young people, basically from the age of 5 up until 35 years old nowadays. We started off working with primary school learners, and then high school learners, and then school leavers. And we know that our young people that we work with come from backgrounds that are very challenged. We help them to find self-esteem. We'll help them to find what their passion is. We help them to see a future for themselves. And once they're older, we want to channel them into career opportunities as well.
We realized that by 2012, 2013, there was so much unemployment in this country that it was time that we took a step further. Because what happens with all the good work that we are doing as AGYI Foundation in the after-school programs for 5 to 18-year-olds, and then they finish school, they don't get into drugs or sex or crime or violence or gangs, but then they're unemployed. Now the stats in South Africa are quite scary. Over 50% of children who start grade 1 drop out of school before writing grade 12. And AGYI Foundation has always prided itself on ensuring these kids don't drop out of school. But then, as I said, we want to make sure that they have a future. Hence, we started our Youth Skills Development Program. There they get the opportunity to do hospitality, sewing, craft and design, beauty and wellness, artisan skills, retail readiness, and even entrepreneurship.
We're trying to bridge a gap as an NPO to try and get them a quick skill that they can learn and be able to find a job or go on to study further.
To date, we have placed 853 students in employment. Out of that, we started realizing that there was this gap that we needed to fill between after-school programs and Youth Skills Development Program. And that's when we came up with the vocational skills training program that we've known for a while we wanted to start, but we weren't sure how because it's all income related and funding. So we've developed an amazing vocational skills training program that we now want to roll out, and that will be very much from your grade 9s to 12s.
I'm very excited that we're able to start looking at career opportunities and looking at what they can do with their lives. So this program, looking at grades 9 to 12, will really assist them to see what the options are for them and where they can go with their lives. So we were very fortunate to get funding from AGYI, which is the Africa German Youth Initiative, to start off our vocational skills training program. Really just to frame what our project's going to look like and connect with as many partners as we can. Obviously, we need to have a program for the long term and have it be sustainable. So we still need to secure funding for that.
So we're appealing to everybody out there. Come on board with the AGYI Foundation. Be part of changing lives, because that's what we're all about, changing lives. educating, empowering, developing these youngsters, keeping them away from the negative influences, giving them a hand up. So please come on board with us, whether it's a development partner, whether it's a potential employer, whether it's a supplier. We've got amazing partners even giving us product for the beauty class, for the hospitality, for the sewing. We need more of that. We can do so much more. And then obviously we need funding. Because we transport the youngsters, we can't expect them to all come here if they're not earning income. We've got to pick them up, we've got to feed them, we've got to pay salaries of teachers and facilitators and coordinators, material, equipment. So we really ask everybody out there, in South Africa, in Africa, worldwide, come on board and partner with us in changing these youngsters' lives, giving them hope, giving them a future. We would value and appreciate you supporting us. Thank you so much.
Ilshan, thank you very much for that. I am excited next to introduce our speaker. We build this as an international conference, and we came across this very, very interesting man, very knowledgeable man called Jörg Wons, who has joined us today from Germany. Jörg will talk to us about vocational training. Is it a question of culture or system? He's very qualified to talk about this topic because Jörg has, even though he is from Germany, he has very extensive experience in South Africa, studying first of all at the University of the Free State and doing his master's in African studies there, as well as between 2005 and 2012, working in the Eastern Cape. And that is a good chunk of time to be working grassroots in our province of the Eastern Cape. He was basically overseeing the partnership between two provinces, one in Germany called Lower Saxony and Eastern Cape in South Africa. He also was supporting the reform of vocational training in that province in cooperation with GIZ, which is a German development agency, and the Ministry of Education. So he has experience at grassroots level in South Africa, as well as government level. And he has some very, very good thoughts to share in terms of what is working in Germany that we can learn from, what is applicable to South Africa that we can implement here. So I'm very, very excited to introduce Jörg to you. And I invite him now to basically talk to us and tell us and share with us what he knows about vocational training that we can learn from. Jörg, handing over to you.
Well, thanks a lot, and hello from Geneva. Okay, there you have a leadership program, a complete system, and the other question is that value is perhaps that people matter more than the system which is behind. Kevin, you already referred to the complicated situation which South Africa faces. Obviously, I'm German, so I always like to compare Germany to South Africa. And I took here the unemployment figures of South Africa and Germany, which are unfortunately very high in South Africa in comparison to Germany. But that's not the key point I want to make. I want that you compare the total number of unemployment with the youth unemployment. And you can see in Germany, it's pretty leveled, 5.2% under the adult population, 6% in the youth. So there's not much of a difference. But in South Africa, there's a huge difference. So twice as many youth people are unemployed in comparison to adults. So obviously, something must be wrong. There are obviously also different factors which I cannot touch. And it's the economy, it's the legislation, it's the tax regime, which also have an impact on that. I only want to concentrate on the vocational side today. Now, if you look at unemployment of youth, the logical answer will be and Kevin mentioned it already, education is the answer. Educated people are less likely to be unemployed than non-educated people. If you look at South Africa, what kind of education people are striving for, you can clearly see that the higher education is more than the half. Technical college only get less than 1/3 of students after matric. Now, if you compare that with Germany, and then translate it for you the German words, you can see that those people who are in a vocational training were always more than students at the university. Only recently, they are like par, that we have roughly 500,000 people in vocational training and 500,000 people at the university. Now, looking at that figure, you could say, well, actually South Africa is doing great because South Africa is ahead of times. We have already more people at university than in vocational training. So Germany is following South Africa because you can clearly see that the number of students are rising and will soon also be on the level like South Africa. I would say, think twice. The question I'm posing is a university degree the best education? And then I come to South Africa, my experiences in South Africa. I could always make the joke, unfortunately, you are from a British colony, and the British are very fixed on university studies, and I will come back to that later. And I slightly want to introduce another person to the presentation, which you do not know, and that's my 12-year-old son, Yuri. And I use him to illustrate the question whether university degree is the best education. He's 12 years old. He is actually also South African and very proud he's South African. But academically, he's not too strong. He doesn't like writing. He doesn't like reading. So that's not his strength. And we had recently a communication with the IT teacher. And he was giving us really a hard time, complaining that he's not handing in his work properly, that he's not writing correctly, that he makes spelling mistakes, and so forth on. Fair point. Spelling is important. But then, funny enough, he realized during the talk to us, but then I looked at the results when it came to coding, to the practical implication. And Yuri was by far the best one in class, outperforming everybody. But there is that fixture on academic education, academic skills, which seem to be the way to heaven, and a total neglect of what people can do. So what I'm trying to say is that university is not for everybody. For some people, university is the best place to be. For other people, like my son, it might be the worst place to be. And people will also not learn the skills they need. There are certain skills you cannot learn at university, which are highly valuable. I mean, if you have a blocked toilet, then you really appreciate if there's a plumber around. You don't care about the sociologist who has a PhD. You want to have the plumber. Now, if you have questions like that, and I'm not paid for that, a good way to look is at The Economist, which is always, I think, quite ahead of time. And they had just, with COVID, an article about university studies. And they stated that it becomes clear that even worldwide, the number of students at universities are increasing, the productivity is not growing, it's falling. So something seems to be wrong. And they also suspect that many skills which are taught at university are not what is needed at the labor market. Again, I'm not saying that university is a bad place to be, quite the contrary, but there are other places which might be also delivering skills which are very important for the economy. One glance again to Germany. If you look at the total number of people who are in a vocational training and apprenticeship, that are always over 1.3 million. If you would translate that into South African terms, you should have roughly 500,000 people on vocational training. If you look at the enrollment of the TVET colleges between 2010 and 2017, the only qualification which comes close to a German dual system vocational training is the occupational qualification. And you have 10,000. There should be 500,000. On the other hand, you have with the N system about 500,000 graduates, and we all know that the N system is not delivering. It's heavily based theoretically, people don't get the skills, and as I read in another study, most of them who finish the N courses are not employable on the labor market. Then you could ask or say, but Mr. Worms, we've got the learnerships. Well, I spoke to quite a couple of people before, and nobody told me or stated that learnerships are a success story. You can see that there's an increase in learnerships. At present, we are sitting at 111,000, but certified only 48,000. A far cry from what I would say 500,000 is the minimum of students South Africa should have on. Thousand. But that reflects an attitude which I unfortunately already discovered in South Africa. There's that cry for the quick fix. Something must be done, some must be fast-tracked. But education can't be fast-tracked. There is no quick solution. Education takes time. And I think it's a false hope to think with short skills courses you can solve the problem of unemployment. Another figure which I only discovered this morning is you have 12,000 interns registered through the learnership program. Just to give you a comparison, in Germany, each year, again, over 500,000 interns in companies who are gaining experiences. So what's wrong with the learnerships? Well, I think they are far too complicated. They would perhaps function in a perfect environment in Germany, but they will never function in South Africa, especially if you look at the rural areas, they're far too complicated. And the second mistake, which I think was done from the onset, and I tried to fight it during my time when I was South Africa, that the FET colleges were not included as providers within the system. That was a great opportunity missed. I'm not saying that the FET colleges are great. They have lots of problems, but to exclude them was perhaps one of the biggest mistakes, because they could have also learned through being part of the system. Now you could say it's nice that Mr. Worms, now German sitting in Geneva, is telling us South Africans we need more vocational training. But luckily, my opinion is not alone. In the National Planning Commission report, you can see clearly the target is 2.5 million people should be enrolled in the vocational system. So what is missing? Or what are your strengths? Well, the legislation is in place. And I always make the joke that if you want to have a strategic document, a strategic paper, go to South Africans. They are the best in writing strategic papers. But if it comes to implementation, it gets very weak. So you have the perfect legislation in place, but the capacity, you don't have the learners. A good teacher will always be a good teacher even if he has no equipment. A bad teacher will always be a bad teacher even if you give him the best equipment of the world. I was once visiting the training center of Mercedes-Benz in Bremen, which is basically a factory, and was really amazed about the amount of machinery and infrastructure was standing around. And afterwards I had a chat with the director of the training center. And I said, wow, that kind of equipment, I mean, that must have cost millions, which it surely did. And then he said to me, well, look, you can have the equipment, take it. I don't worry, but never take my people. So the key to good education is the HR side, is the teacher. And if you look at what Mr. Naidu looked at the strengths and the weaknesses of the current system, you can clearly see that the strengths are, your systems are in place, they're perfect, but the weakness is the implementation. There's a lack of capacity, and that's why vocational training is not taking place. Now, why is it that we always tell you, I think since 20 years, the Germans are telling the South Africans vocational training is very important and nothing is changing? Well, I have a solution for you. And I'm surely you expected a solution like this. This is a cover of a book called Debit and Credit. And that was a bestseller, the best-selling book in the 19th century in Germany. In the 19th century, lots of things happened. But this bestseller was a story about a young apprentice who got successful through vocational training. And that was a story people were reading. So that shows how important vocational training is in Germany, which highly regarded people are who have done a vocational training, who are a master in a bakery or whatever. And again, I come back to my son Yuri, because realizing that he doesn't have the academic skills, most likely to follow the academic route, we had a chat with a lovely principal here from the school, British. And the clear conversation was that for him, vocational training was second best. He was always pointing out, no, he should try the academic route and he will succeed and he shall try. And if it doesn't work out, well, he still can go to a vocational school. It never occurred to him that vocational training as such is a talent. It's always second best. It's always looked down. He didn't realize, or doesn't realize, that it is something with an own value, and somebody who's able to do something is perhaps more important for society than somebody who can write intelligent papers which nobody reads. So what I think South Africa needs is a culture of vocational training. And I took three pictures to illustrate that. That is a German pic, which you see. And you see an old master showing a young student how to do it, but he's not showing it. And that's a big difference. The young student is acting. And it's not that somebody is showing. The second picture is quite a funny one. The man on the left-hand side, Mr. Wolf, he was Premier of Lower Saxony and afterwards President of Germany, so quite an important politician. And we visited a project of Lower Saxony in Umtata in the Nelson Mandela Museum, a craft skills project. And he was spending about 10 minutes talking to this girl. And you can see the people behind, they were really getting nervous. I mean, why is perhaps one of the most important politicians of the time in Germany speaking 10 minutes to a young girl? Because vocational training is important for him.
Jörg, 5 minutes.
And the last picture I wanted to show you is, and you had in your introduction similar pictures, that is how it should be. That is also a result from that project. You see a teacher and two students who are proudly showing what they have done. They are proud of it. And I think that is needed, that you are proud of your work and that you have a vocation and delivering that kind of work. So that were basically my thoughts I wanted to share with you. Thanks a lot. And since I mentioned my son now a couple of times, I thought it would be fair to give him also the opportunity to jump in the sky. And for him, the sky will only be the limit. He will not be an academic, but he has enough practical skills which will ensure that he will live a successful life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jörg. I'm looking in the Q&As. I'm not seeing a question. So I will ask you one. At what level do young people in Germany get to choose which path they want to take, whether it's going to be vocational or academic, and what makes it easy for them to do that instead of just wanting to go to university like we do here and thinking of technical training as a second choice or third choice, or what you do if you can't get into university?
Normally you have the chance to choose the first vocational subjects in grade 7, grade 8. And then there's one important difference, that after grade 10, you have basically two pathways to get to your matric. You can stay on the normal high school, or you can choose a vocational stream, which could be business administration, which could be technical, which could be health related, and you can get your matric. And that matric still will enable you to study within that field in a university. So it's not that you go to a vocational school that the possibility is ruled out to study afterwards. And that is especially, like I'm taking my son, English will never be his best subject, but a technical matric would be perfect for him because he will be a great programmer. But that opportunity, as far as I know, does not exist in South Africa. The matric is for everybody the same, and one should have different streams for different talented people.
Awesome, thank you very much. We've got some questions that have come through. York, if you don't mind, you can stop sharing so we can see you.
Yes.
And then I will go through some of the questions. So a question from Stephen Gweza is, how do we as South Africans recruit good vocational teachers?
Very, very good question. Sorry, I'm started to stop sharing my screen, but I'm not sure whether it worked because I've got a frozen screen now. Can you see me?
We still see your screen, but just keep trying. You can answer the question in the meantime.
Okay. Now I kicked myself out.
Can you see the stop sharing button at the top?
Yeah, I pressed it, but I'm afraid that I will just kick me out of the meeting. Now to the question, okay. I think that it's a complicated question. And I would go back to Finland. Finland, as you might know, has the most successful school system and scoring always the highest. Now, the reason is not that the teachers are the best paid in Finland. That's not the case, but they are the most highly regarded profession within Finland. Finland has an approach that they look already in matric for the best students, and the best students will be approached to ask whether they want to become a teacher. So I think the first point, again, it becomes that teachers are really highly regarded, and that it's not seen as a second option, that people become teachers who are really talented, but also from the teacher side, which I experience very often, they need practical experience. You can't teach plumbing if you have never been a plumber. And I discovered always a huge reluctance to get in touch with business. I think they were afraid that if they would get in touch with business, they would realize that their knowledge is not up to standard to the knowledge of companies. So I think there an exchange has to take place.
Awesome. The other question is, do you think the structure of community colleges in South Africa is likely to make an impact on the unemployment rate?
Unfortunately, I can't answer the question because I would not be in a position to judge the work of the community colleges.
All right. And then a comment from somebody one of the participants saying, I agree that you cannot create a system unless you develop a culture. Cultural practices will contribute to bring the system into existence. However, you seem to suggest that there is no culture of vocational education training in South Africa. Why do you think so? It's a question.
There's a little, you never should make sweeping statements, but I think there's a lack of, and as I tried to point out, that is that kind of British culture looking at university and thinking that university is a place to be. I think it's also related to apartheid, that through the separation, that somehow minor jobs are disregarded. Everybody wants to have that kind of white collar job associated with wealth, which was absolutely correct during the apartheid. But I think there's also not a realization that these technical jobs, which are seen are looked down, are actually career paths. So I think that is also a heritage from apartheid, that somehow people only see university as a way to go because they could see it that white people who were at university were rich and the black population stayed poor. And I think the mind shift did not take place, that there are other ways to wealth and a fulfilled life than university.
Awesome. Another question, how has Germany managed to remove the stigma and discrimination around taking VST? Taking vocational skills training.
There was never a stigma. I mean, that is if you look, and therefore I took that book from the 19th century, you could even take a book from Goethe. That is a culture which started most likely in the Middle Age, that you have a high regard for craftsmen. the whole vocational training system was built up in the Middle Age, but it was also like a protection mechanism, because you could only be a baker if you had been certified by the chamber in the Middle Age. Well, therefore, you needed skills and you needed training, but it also was used as a system to block out people who didn't have the certification. So it basically secured the market. I mean, if you only can be baker when you have that certificate, you ensure that the competition is limited. So it's a double-edged sword, but that culture was developed. And perhaps give you another little story about which kind of impact that vocational training has. I once visited Mercedes-Benz in Stuttgart. And when I went to the meeting, I had to go through the workshops, and there was a man in a very awkward position crawling under a car and fiddling around. Because it looked rather funny, or I just looked at it. And after 3-4 hours, I came back again, and that man was still lying under the seat and crawling around and trying to do something. And then I asked my colleague, what is that man doing? And then he said, well, he is our chief engineer of Mercedes-Benz, and he's trying to find a position for a light which is perfect. So he understood that it takes about 5-6 hours to find the position, and he was not ashamed to crawl under the seat to find that position, because he knows that technical detail matters, that you position at the right position. And that kind of culture and value and paying the value to your work because he wants to take pride in his work, I think that is something typically German, and unfortunately, but German quality has a high quality standard, because not everybody, but most of the people take a pride of their work, be it only to put a light at the right position.
Awesome. Next question, how does the German community college structure operate?
Look, we have a functioning vocational training system. I think the main thing is it is divided into technical and business administration. And the normal thing is, the normal pathway is we have that 3-way schools. We have not only matric, we have also something which you call mittlere Reife when you finish after year 10. And normally the normal way is that you then start a vocational training. But also lots of people, and I myself, I passed my matric, also first did a vocational training as a tax consultant. So it's pretty normal for somebody who has passed the matric to say, well, first I do a vocational training and then I go to university. Because then you have an idea of what the real working life looks like. And again, that is a clear option. And I think also a difference to South Africa, that these vocational traineeships are actually quite well paid. So you can easily earn about 600, 700, 800 euros, depending on the profession. And that is also, yeah, an incentive for youngsters to pursue that career.
Okay, thank you. Another one, I think we need a discussion on why people are unemployed. We need to go way beyond putting the problem at the door of education and skills training. Absolutely right.
Absolutely right. I mean, as I said at the beginning, I only concentrate on education. I think the problem in South Africa is wider, and now I'm slightly stepping outside my field. I think there is a lack of culture to assist small businesses. I think the South African government is concentrated on the big companies, but not realizing the potential of medium and small enterprises. Again, I think they're looked down. In Germany, the medium-sized enterprises are always the engine of the German economy. And I think there the culture have to change. I think they has to get more business friendly, simplified. They have to support small businesses because they are the key. They are the key to vocational training. And unfortunately, I didn't look at the figure, but if you would find figures in Germany, you will see that the majority of trainees training will be done by medium-sized enterprises and not by the big companies. But in South Africa, people concentrate again on that kind of quick fix. We need another Mercedes-Benz. We concentrate on ESCOM, but we don't give the small enterprises the environment which they need to flourish.
Awesome. I think that is it for your time. Okay, sorry, I'm just looking at something that is posted in the chat. Somebody else has asked a question about where one can find vacancies for TVET college teachers and lecturers. It's very hard to get all, so that's not for you, I think. We can save that question for somebody else. I think our last speaker, perhaps Cassie Kruger, who is more involved with the Department of Higher Education. York, thank you very much. I think there's one more that we can perhaps do that just popped in. The question is that with all the costly skills training being offered, it's disappeared on me. I don't know what happened, but it disappeared off the Q&A. So I think we'll wrap it up there. Any questions that we've missed or haven't covered, obviously we'll scour through this and just make sure that we get answers for everybody. But York, thank you very, very much for joining us. I've appreciated our conversations throughout since we met, and I'm sure there'll be more and more discussions moving forward with you. I'm learning a lot from you. Thank you very much for joining us today. And we will be chatting soon.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, Nella, from a technical perspective, how do we help York with the screen share?
I think I will leave the Zoom meeting, I think, and then you can carry on and I will rejoin. I think I just have to, I was afraid now to leave the Zoom meeting because I think then our conversation would have collapsed, but I will now switch down my computer and rejoin you. Thanks a lot, and I would have loved to be in Cape Town, but I will remain for the conference. So if there's other questions, I still remain at your disposal. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you very much, York. Okay, so next on the agenda, we've got a video. We've made sure that we wanted to introduce you to some of our learners, some of our coordinators and facilitators that work very hard with our young people to teach them different vocational skills at the AGYI Foundation. So we're going to play one of the videos that showcases one of our learners and our coordinators. Ilshin, if you're ready, you can share that with us, please.
I grew up in a shack. We call it AGYI. I'm the first child at home. So I wanted to buy my mother a house. I was thinking that maybe I will go and work for a big company.
Okay, I think while we're waiting
money
for
so that
the
I can
video,
change
if you guys can
the
just type
situation
in chat.
at home. And it was not easy to find a job, especially that I didn't finish a matric.
Our learners come from really challenged backgrounds, and typically they would have gone to township schools. That in itself presents the challenge of them not necessarily having the confidence or the skills as such to find their own employment. So they just have no way of knowing how to go about finding employment opportunities.
They come with huge challenges, the students. The problem is there's a lot of unemployment in our country. So we find that once they leave school, that they actually need to fend for themselves. So they come out of families that are large homes, where you would find there's either 6 or 8 people that live within that home, and there's maybe just one breadwinner. So they get quite excited when they come to the AGYI, so they find this is their chance.
When I entered this room, I was like, this is the beginning of my journey as a designer. And the facilitators were very welcoming.
So we find that the morale is quite down when they get here, the self-confidence. And that's what we work on. We got a very much a holistic approach how we work with our learners. So not only do we give them the confidence, we also give them that skill. And the result's quite positive because we aim to put them in a job.
You see them as they acquire these vocational skills, starting to understand that these skills are really priceless. It can actually generate an income for them.
When you first come here, you don't know anything about the business side. So they help us to do the pricing. They show us where to buy cheaper things to make your products. So they help us a lot.
With that skill, they gain a lot of confidence because they actually know what they're doing. And with that skill, we also give them business training, which is in the form of soft skills that we do offer at the AGYI Foundation, where it's how to actually run your business, from the finance part to the actual business etiquette part.
Our message to our learners from day one is that there are not enough jobs to go around. So they have to give thought to creating their own employment. And this is a theme that runs throughout the time with us and throughout all the programs. And all of our disciplines lend themselves to entrepreneurship. So the skills that are being taught are really vocational skills, something that you can do, that you can, those skills you can make use of to generate an income for yourself.
Ever since I went on my own, it's been a nice journey for me. Now I'm ready maybe to open a small shop for myself.
Wow, thank you, Ilshan. So I hope you enjoyed. Sorry, was I muted? I hope you enjoyed that. We're going to move on to our next keynote address. Very dynamic young lady that we've met through our journey of discovery. Her name is Isabella Shabangu. She is joining us from the Southern African German Chamber of Commerce and Industry, where she's the head of Department for Training and Corporate Social Responsibility. What is interesting about Isabella is that she is actually a product of the very topic that she's going to be talking about, dual vocational training in South Africa, based on the German model. She studied her dual vocational training program in business administration, and I think she's very well qualified to speak on the subject and talk to us about what companies from the Chamber's perspective are doing in South Africa to encourage vocational training. She joined the Chamber in 2016, and her responsibilities involve managing CSR, which is corporate social responsibility projects that are implemented by the members of the Chamber, implementing various vocational dual vocational projects to reduce unemployment, and building bilateral relationships between vocational education projects here in South Africa and Germany. I'm very proud to introduce her to you. And again, another person that we are going to have an ongoing relationship and partnership with into the future. So Isabella, over to you. And thank you very much for coming on board.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Yeah, I think it's quite an honor to be able to speak about the experience of my experience, but more about the dual vocational training in South Africa based on the German model on behalf of the Chamber. The Chamber, maybe I should start by giving a brief summary of what the Chamber's responsibilities are. They are actually, we've been here in South Africa for more than 60 years, and we are responsible for fostering bilateral relationships, business relationships between Germany and South Africa through various ways, and one of them is through skills development. Next slide, please. The Chamber has been responsible for vocational training in South Africa since 1985. Initially, in 1984, we started with a program that was just to support teachers for 1 year, doing extra lessons for teachers. However, by virtue of the chamber being more on the business side, we had a lot of the German-based companies looking for dual vocational training. And the reason for that is that at the time, I mean, it was in 1985, most of the companies were bringing in experts from a technical point of view. However, on the commercial side, they found that they wanted young people to start early learning within the commercial structures. Next slide, please, Elshin. And this is basically just a summary of the History Chamber in Education. And as you can see, it's developed from the Funda Training Center in 1984 to our official dual vocational training in business administration known as the CATS program, which is the very same program that I also went through. And then we had a partnership with BTC in Soweto, where we were doing training for the construction and the building industry. And then for that, in order to support that, in 2008, we started with, we created an NPO called South African German Training Services, which was just a strategic marketing and management training company for both the CATS as well as Builders Training Center. And over that time, we then decided in order to have a collaborative dual vocational training, how do we do that? And by virtue of the structure of vocational training in Germany, that's when in 2017 we decided to create an education and training advisory committee, of which I will talk about as I go through my presentation. And then in 2019 we started with a pilot program in mechatronics, as a mechatronics dual vocational training program. And I think before I go into the detail, most importantly, what is dual vocational training? I'm sure York mentioned based also, you probably have seen something similar. York has talked about dual vocational training based on the German system. And this is more or less what it looks like, where you've got young people spending 30% in their 2 or 3 years of vocational training at the actual school or TVET college, doing their theory as well as practical simulation. And then the other 70% at a company where they rotate and learn, and they're supported by a mentor within the company to basically get the proper practical experience. And this is also unified training where you find that the school as well as the company have a relationship in order to allow for successful vocational training. And this vocational training is possible not only in the technical field or in the commercial field, but across all industries. And it can take a period of 2 to 3.5 years. Next slide, please. But it's only possible to do vocational training if it's collaborative. So you need stakeholders, you need individuals, companies, social partners involved in dual vocational training, because each has a skill, each has experience that would allow for successful dual vocational training. So on the chamber, these are the different stakeholders that we have involved in our dual vocational training programs in South Africa. So if you look very closely at this slide, you will see that this is not a copy and paste from Germany exactly as it's done in Germany to South Africa, but we've got stakeholders as the chamber in this case, and this is purely because most of our companies are German-based companies, and they would like to have the German certification at the end as well. But we've got stakeholders in government such as the CETAs, the QCTOs that are involved in our dual vocational training programs. And of course, you've got the vocational schools, which are responsible for the theoretical as well as the practical simulation, and they do the normal tests as well as assignments. And much more importantly, not much more important than everybody else, but we've got the companies which allows for the young people to be able to learn while they work. So whatever they've learned at the TVET college, they now get the opportunity. If on Monday they are learning about, if I had to give a simple example, they are doing business administration and they're learning about writing business letters, for example. On Tuesday, when they get to the company for the next 3 months, they get to be in a department that way they learn how to write those letters, to see how to address different stakeholders, etc. So the theory is really married to the practical in a way that after the 3 years, there is no other way but to get these young people employed directly, because not only would they hold the German and the South African certification, but they've got the 3 years experience when they start doing vocational training directly from matric. Next slide, please. And in order to do that, I mentioned earlier that we'll talk about our committee. The Chamber then created this committee. It is an official committee, which is led by Dr. Marcus Till, the President of Bosch for Africa, Mr. Nico Landman, the CEO of Nikabi, previously head of didactic at Feston, and myself as the Chamber, as the Secretariat. And the reason for that is that as the Chamber, we've got plus minus 600 German-based companies in South Africa. So we have overview of what's happening within the companies at any given point in time, and we have access to the companies as well. Next slide, please. And this has allowed for us to create a structure for our dual vocational training, where, as you see in the middle, you've got the committee, but because we've got different programs in dual vocational training, within the committee, you've got working groups that are responsible for the different vocational trainings. And in these working groups, it's not only the companies that are there, it's the CETAs, it's the QCTO, but it's also the educational institutions such as TVET colleges, because ultimately vocational training is based on demand. So in order to get the young people employed, we need to find out what is the demand, which skills are important for the companies. So we did a survey about a year ago after we implemented the mechatronics program, and most of the companies wanted skills in logistics. So we started with the logistics dual vocational training, because there were companies that are saying, okay, if you train the young people according to based on the dual model, we are willing to take them in and train them ourselves, because South Africa, there's a lack of skills within the logistics industry. So just using that as an example. However, all those decisions are made in collective by the committee, depending on which working group the committee is responsible for. Next slide, please. And this is just maybe to give an idea that you've got the overall committee, and then you've got the lead task group, which is responsible then for implementing. So as you can see, by virtue of the spokespeople within this task group, it's based on its industry. So because the industry in vocational training generally knows what's happening within the industry, what skills they want, that if they had to employ the young people, where would they put them, what would they learn, and next year, what skills would they need? And in this case, by virtue of now already being, the whole world being forced into the fourth industrial revolution, ready or not, then this logistics committee was able to say already then, last year when we started this discussions, that we need to include digitalization into the logistics program. So this way the importance of the committee comes in, where you've got industry partners, you've got the chambers of commerce, you've got the CETAs, as well as the QCTO, who then were able to advise us to say, okay, based on the South African system, this is what you need to do, and this is how you need to do it. Next slide, please. And here, the next 2 slides, I will not go into that much detail on, because this is basically what I've been talking about in terms of the committee needs to have roles and responsibilities that they are doing as a collective. So by that, I mean, it's not only up to the companies to say, this is what we're looking for, this is what we want, but to also the educational institutions to say, okay, how do we implement it? From our side, this is how we can recruit the young people. This is how we need to recruit them. This is what we need to look at. So it creates that collaborativeness within the actual programs of dual vocational training to allow for each member or each role or each institution or each company to basically have a role within the committee. And from an implementation point of view, what we've done within the committee when we're implementing these programs is that we created working groups that are responsible for the implementation process of each program to allow for the work to keep going in the background, even if they have their normal day-to-day work. So when we implemented, for example, the mechatronics program, we had a working group that was responsible for accreditation and certification, for example. And then as a German chamber, obviously the not so challenging part would be for us to get the German accreditation. But in South Africa, then we needed to see who can we put in this working group to assist with the accreditation for the South African qualification. And that's where we've got institutions like the CETAs as well as the QCTOs, but also some of the more technical people within the companies that were able to speak to the QCTO and the CETA to say, yes, we do that. And then the QCTO and the CETAs were able to look and say, okay, based on that, this is what we have currently in South Africa, and this is how you can accredit this program, etc., etc. Please, next 3 slides, please. I know I'm moving a bit faster also in the interest of time. Currently, the Chamber has 3 dual vocational training programs. The initial program is the CATS program, as you can see on your left-hand side. That's a 2-year dual vocational training program, where you've got, it's South African accredited through ICB, but it's also accredited in Germany. So the young people spend 2 years, and how that's structured is that once a week they go to the college, and in this case, by virtue of the CATS program being, I guess you can say, the baby of the Chamber's dual vocational training, the lecturing happens within the Chamber. So once a week, the young people come to the Chamber to do their theoretical modules, and then 4 days a week they spend at the company doing their practical on-the-job training, where they rotate within the different departments of the company for a period of 3 to 4 months in each company within the 2-year duration. So within the 2-year duration, the young person who has just completed matric, freshly out of matric, gets the opportunity to work in finance, in office administration of a company for 4 months, where they have a mentor within a company who's responsible to ensure that they are getting the relevant on-the-job training. And that is where the commitment from the company comes in. So they're not just taking in young people as apprentices for the sake of it, but also the companies need to be committed to the process in a way that they establish and ensure that they've got a mentor who will ensure that after 4 months of that young person having been in the bookkeeping department, for example, they're able to answer basic questions and to do the basic bookkeeping with, of course, supervision. So at the end of the 2 years, after you've completed your 2-year program, you have experience in business administration. And speaking from experience, after 2 years, I had a good idea in terms of how does a company operate, and what does really, when you say marketing, what does a marketing department really do for the company? When we say economics, where does that feature in within the specific company? And it also allowed for me as a young person at the time, and still allows for young people to be able to find their feet as well. Because I mean, currently, most young people, they battle after they finish matric to see, what am I going to study? Something, accounting sounds great, I'm good at accounting in school, I'm going to study accounting. And the minute they start working in accounting, they realize, maybe this is not for me, I'm more of a marketing person. So that duration in business administration allows for the young people to be able to also choose their actual vocations or choose their careers, or really see what happens and what can they do within their careers. I mean, when I was doing the CATS program, before I started, I actually wanted to be a doctor, you know. But now, because of the CATS program, in that 2 years, I actually realized and learned I actually cannot stand the look of, I cannot prod people, and it's just not my vocation. So it's through this dual vocational training where I realized that I'm more of a people's person, but on the outside, and not really helping them medically, but more of a front office person, if you can put it that way. So it kills 2 birds in 1 stone, in the sense that it allowed for me to get and find a career or a vocation that I'm passionate about, but it also I also managed to get a certificate, an accredited South African certificate, as well as German certification. And that's exactly what we've done with also the mechatronics program, as well as the logistics and supply chain program.
Isabella, you can start wrapping up.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. I think this is just maybe to give an idea for companies. You know, this is how companies benefit, because they don't have to spend too much money on the training, because they can train their young people in terms of the culture and everything. It increases productivity as well as efficiency, but also it allows for the young people to be motivated and learn new skills, learn how companies operate early on, without them realizing 3 or 5 years later, after having completed their degrees, that this is not what they want to do. So the Chamber has been involved in that since 1985, and I think if I have to go on, then I'll probably talk way beyond the time that I've been given, but I welcome any questions after this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabella. I think if I can just highlight to everybody on this call that these are things that are happening right now in South Africa that are led by industry and business, that are part of the Southern African Chamber, German Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So these are programs that are happening right now. I've attended a couple of these sessions that Isabella and her team have had with different industries. For example, agriculture was a recent one. And the effort is really there for business to lead in this area, which is very encouraging, and I think that is something that for other companies to emulate. So I don't see any questions that have come through yet for Isabella. Please post them in the Q&A section. If you can, please, not the chat, because the chat can get very busy. I think, Isabella, if I can just start off the questions for you. Because we're based in the Western Cape, so it's a bit of self-interest, I guess, from me, from the AGYI Foundation. Can you just quickly talk about what the Chamber is doing in this province specifically?
In the Western Cape, we have not started anything yet, but we will be starting with the, together with the Hope Foundation, we'll be starting with the dual logistics program. We're still in the early stages of implementation as well as discussions. So I can't share much more than that at the moment, but we are definitely looking at it. And I mean, before COVID-19, we actually had a plan to start dual vocational training in the hospitality and tourism industry in the Western Cape. So now we have to relook at our strategy and see what's happening obviously after COVID and how the actual industry is doing in order to see if we can start something like that, because there is no point in starting dual vocational training if there are no companies, and companies I don't mean necessarily big companies. In this case, for example, of hospitality and tourism, if the hotels are closing up, for example, if the lodges are closing up, then you can't start dual vocational training in the hospitality and tourism industry. So and that's what's important from our side, to ensure that the demand is there, because it's the demand that allows for the employability of young people, but it still also allows for self-employment if they've spent 2 or 3 years working at the lodge and learning everything in terms of how the lodges operate.
Awesome. So I see that there were questions for York as well that I missed earlier. I'm wondering if it would make sense for both of you to try and field these questions. I am going to try and empower York. I know I'm putting him on the spot here, but if I can, I can see if he can come on.
Yes, I'm there.
On his video. Awesome. Okay. All right. You can turn your video on if you can, York. So one of the questions was for you, York, specifically, while we're waiting for questions for Isabella. You mentioned that South Africa has good legislation but lacks capacity to implement. Please, can you expand on what capacity we are lacking in your view?
Look, firstly, I wanted to reiterate that the legislation is far too complicated. If you look at the Skills Development Act, I mean, a system which a reasonable, clever person cannot understand, I mean, that's far too complicated. If it comes to capacity, because the Skills Development and the learner system is far too removed from the reality on the ground, it cannot work. And if you look at capacity, it took me so much time to convince teachers or to get FET colleges to speak to companies. I mean, it sounds really ridiculous, but it was really complicated to get FET colleges to speak to companies. They were so hesitant to speak to Volkswagen, to Mercedes. It was like, no, we don't want to speak to them. And that must be the natural partner. It must be the other way around. The FET colleges should bang every day on the doors of the company and say, we have to talk to you. We want to do training with you. So I think there's a mind shift. And that's what I was trying to point out in various directions. A mind shift has to take place. You can have the best legislation in the world if people are not seeing the value of vocational training and not trying to change it in their environment, then nothing will change.
Awesome. A question perhaps for both of you from Farrell from DVV is, the question is that with all the costly skills training being offered, could you tell us what links with huge unemployment as, how that links with huge unemployment as businesses' culture is for less employment in favor of technology? For example, banking, 10,000 jobs are on the line at the moment because they're looking for technology solutions rather than people. Isabella, are you able to comment on that?
Maybe to a certain extent. I think the challenge is that there's a message out there that makes it look like that's what is preferred. People as opposed, technology as opposed to people. But I think before even now, the current system with COVID, it was clear that we're moving towards a more digitalized world, you know, and hence, for example, at the Chamber, we started with mechatronics dual vocational training, because that's not only specific for technical manufacturing companies, that can also be utilized within the banking industry, because it's also automation, it's robotics, etc. So I think maybe based on the current system, educational system that is complex and the implementation lacking, but also the difficulties in understanding, in there being a demand-led type situation for training or for creating employability leads to such situations. Because I'm sure 4 years ago, had there been, using the banking industry as an example, they already saw that in 4 years' time, they would need more digitalized skills. So had there been 10,000 young people, or those initial people that are within the banking industry being trained according to the required skills, using maybe vocational training as an example, then there would be now opportunities for those young people to continue working within the banking industry, regardless of technology. Because remember, at the end of the day, all that technology that is used, somebody needs to do the maintenance on all the machinery. Somebody needs to do continuous development, you know. So technology is not only on machinery or on skills, but it, like skills as in working on the computer, but it's also that the people that are working on those computers, who's servicing them, who's creating new machinery, etc., etc. So I think that's my answer to it, but because that's not a topic I'm fully au fait with, normally I would leave that to the Chamber's Industry 4.0 group to answer, but that's as far as I can take it from my side.
Thank you, Isabella. Another question for you. How many students do you recruit and what is the employment rate? How many can be accommodated annually?
The recruitment is based on how many companies are able to accommodate the students. So at the moment, we've got in total about, altogether is about 60 students for all the programs. And reason for that is because if there are companies that do not take any young people, then there is no dual vocational training, because you can't have them being trained theoretically with no practical, because we'll still have the same problem. So what we believe in is that if we had more companies that are willing to take young people on proper dual vocational training, then there would be more spots and we'll be able to recruit more young people. And normally we advertise on the chamber websites and the TVET colleges that we work with in Gauteng for our vocational training programs in Gauteng, where we advertise with them and get some of the young students from them if they don't come directly from Matric. And the plan is to increase the partnership with TVET colleges. I mean, prior to this meeting, I had a meeting with quite a number of TVET colleges that are interested in vocational training to see how do we increase that, how do we support them, and how do we create and support dual vocational training based on demand. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question, are you actively involved as the chamber in facilitating work-related exchange programs in the framework of vocational training as well with the companies in your network?
First, I would have to understand what is work-related vocational training.
Yeah, work-related exchange programs, it says.
That's something we were looking at doing. We should be able to support it. It depends on the industry, depends on the occupation, but it's not something that is our main focus. The reason for that is we believe that vocational training needs to be sustainable and it needs to be able to create employability, if not self-employment. And what we have found is that if we allow young people to spend only 3 months in a specific company, they have not learned anything in that 3 months that would allow for them to even be self-employed or to get more employability. In our programs, since 1985, 95% of the young people are immediately employed by those companies after completing the program. And the 5% can find self-employment immediately after 6 months if the company doesn't employ them directly. So within 3 months, or 1 week, or however is required to facilitate those vocational exchanges, it just gives a glimpse for the young people into what work can look like, but it doesn't necessarily give them any skills to allow for them to be employable or to be self-employed. And hence we believe in dual vocational training that is more long-term, that allows for proper employability or self-employment afterwards.
Awesome. Your last question for you. Are you planning to partner up with NGOs to offer training in their communities?
If required, if there is a demand from the industry, because there is no point in doing training if it's for just to do the theory. It's easy to do the theory and practical simulation, but if they cannot get experience in a specific industry or within a specific occupations, then it still does not help them. So if there is an NGO that has and is based in a specific area where there's demand in that specific area from the industry as well, we would be more than happy to partner with them to support the initiatives.
Awesome. And those are the questions. Isabella, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for the presentation. I'm sure people will be wanting to connect with you. I think that last question was a similar question to what I asked you before, so we will discuss that. York, thank you to you as well for rejoining. I just wanted to make sure we close the loop on the questions that were outstanding. Both of you, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to our further exchanges. And yeah, hopefully you're staying with us for the rest of the day. If you can't, I will definitely reconnect with you and we can carry this discussion further. Thank you very much. You can switch off your videos so we can continue. All right, so what I didn't mention earlier is that we have a cameo from the Premier of the Western Cape, Mr. Alan Wendy. He was invited to be a speaker on this conference. He unfortunately couldn't make it because of commitments in Parliament, but he was kind enough to record a video for us and to make sure that he has a message that he sends to us. Mr. Alan Winde, I think, is well known to all South Africans. He is the Premier of the Western Cape. Prior to that, he was the Provincial Minister of Finance, Minister of Economic Opportunities, and Minister of Community Safety. I'm sure, Ilshin, you are ready with the message from him. But yes, another supporter and friend of the foundation.
Hi, this is Alan Winde, Premier in the Western Cape. And first of all, I must apologize that I cannot be with you all today. I'm sorry, it would have been really nice to be there, but I'm really happy that I could be with you on this video screen. I think your subject for discussion and what you're going to be dealing with in vocational skills is something that's close to my heart. It's something that I'm really concerned about. We look at some of the numbers in our country and in our province. We know that 28% of our youth or young people ages between 15 and 24 are what we call NEETs, not in employment or in education or in training. And that means we've all got to put our minds to this to try and fix this systemic problem that we have. We also know that post-COVID-19, we've lost many jobs in our system. Over 100,000 jobs in our tourism industry. We've lost 41,000 jobs in our construction industry. We've lost 38,000 jobs just in the informal sector. And we've got to get these jobs back as quickly as possible. But we've also got to build this. We've also got to get the structural changes right within our education systems, within our higher education systems, and within our technical and vocational training systems. That partnership between business and government is also really critical. Demand-led is critical as well. And we've been doing so over the last couple of years, focusing primarily on the green economy. We've been putting quite a lot of energy into the tech economy, the Silicon Cape region. And we've got to be creating those skills for the future now, because I think COVID-19 globally has forced the world into a whole new competitive environment, specifically around tech and enabling new businesses to start up. And we must be, or make sure that here in the southern tip of Africa, we're also at the cutting edge, understanding we already had a disadvantage of a backlog. So I'm sorry once again that I can't be with you, but good luck with your deliberations. And I'm glad, because this is exactly the focus that we all should be focusing on in going forward for specifically young people in vocational training.
Thank you very much. I think this is exactly the type of endorsement we need from our provincial government. Ilshin, I see that I skipped an item in the agenda. I'm sorry about that. I would like to introduce you to yet another young person who's been through our programs and the coordinators that are working with them. So Ilshin, yes, please, can you cue the video and we watch that?
The AGYI Foundation plays a very important role. The beauty industry, even just to obtain a simple certificate, is a lot of money. And a lot of our students are people who are either dropouts from high school dropouts, parents that do not afford for them to continue with their schooling, so they're having to find a job to assist at home financially. And some of them matriculate, but they don't afford to pursue tertiary education. What we provide is education that they don't have to pay for. And with that comes the soft skills for those who decide that they want to become entrepreneurs.
The reason why I came to the foundation is because my parents never had the money for other colleges, and it was actually really difficult. So coming to the foundation was actually like a relief for my parents, because they didn't ask for a fee. It was just maybe a little push for me. I've learned a lot of things here by the foundation. So I went to a self-esteem class as well here. And to be honest, I wasn't really a confident person because I didn't speak a lot in the beginning. I was just here to take notes and just listen to the teacher and all of those things. But when I found myself and when they taught me how to find myself, I became more confident and I became to opening up and asking questions and learning about new things and asking Ms. Roxy and Ms. V for advice. And it's basically coming out of my comfort zone and actually going and stepping into a challenge. And I can say that I'm actually really grateful that I actually went to that class, because I don't think I would have been where I am today without that class. I still remember Ms. Roxy's story when she told us that when she got into beauty, she used to do model shows and putting makeup on for 5 rand for the people. And I mean, their stories was very inspiring, and you know, anybody can become who they want to be if you set your mind to it.
Roxy was like our mentor. Not only she taught us the skills, but she was mentoring us throughout. And she would also look for employment for us. She was the one that I got my first job as a beauty therapist because of her.
Queen is one of the people who was spotted here because one of the outcomes that we have is that with those students that are seeking employment, we find employment for them. So we had one of our development partners who came and gave training here, who then spotted her and said, I would like her to come and work for us. And the person that I have just seen blossom is just so amazing. She said that she found her passion, and she didn't even know that beauty was her passion.
So I want to say thank you to them. I have learned a lot from them. I have so much skills. It's been a great help for me a lot. Now that I have my own business, I wouldn't even decide on what to do, but it has grown me a lot.
We are assisting our country and the government when it comes to getting a community that is economically active. So one of the critical things to make our program be of value is the development partners that we have. And we're always looking to have even more development partners. Wherever we can, we have our funders, which we need all the time, to provide us with the funding so that we can buy the equipment and the products to be able to do the training. So the more we can have, the better it is for us to give back to the community and have more people be economically active.
Thank you very much, Ocean. So we're coming to a place in the program where we need a little bit of participation again from the attendees. We're going to run a poll just to have your say. Ocean is going to queue that up for us so that we can all complete it. The poll has a couple of questions, I think 3 questions. So it really requires that you click button and tell us what your thoughts are about the program so far. I hope you can all see it. Type in the chat if you're having a problem. Okay, please type in the chat and let me know whether you can see the poll. Okay, only a few people have answered so far. Awesome, we're getting it. The answers are coming through. That's awesome. So we'll give it another minute or so. Okay, we're 38% people have voted. That's good. We'll give it a few more seconds, maybe get up to the 2-minute mark. So please keep answering. Okay, we have a 54% response rate. Shall I give it another half a minute? Okay, 22 out of 36, 61% response rate. That's good, that's good. I'm not sure when to stop. I'm excited because more people are answering. Okay, I'm just gonna let the clock, Ilshin, if we can let it run to 3 minutes and then we can show the results. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we are at the 3-minute mark. So we can stop the poll now and look at the results. So we just wanted to see which of the topics you found most valuable, and it looks like 61% of you said the topic on vocational training, is it a question of culture and system? Another question that was important for us to ask is what is your area of need when it comes to vocational skills training? Majority said implementation partners. That's very interesting. 29% funding, and 21% said advice, as well as other resources that are not financial. This one I really like. Which sector do you come from? So it looks like the majority of participants on this conference are from the non-government, non-profit sector. And what support or expertise do you offer in the area of vocational skills training? Majority is educational, a few funding, a few advisory, project implementation. So this gives you a good sense of who is with us in this conference, and also the possibilities for connecting, because there's quite a diversity of expertise and skills on offer, as well as needs on offer as well. So excellent. Thank you very much for filling that in for us. I did spot that there were a few questions that I missed during the Q&A. I think we can, let me see, can I stop sharing the results? Or Ilshin, are you empowered to do that? Because I don't seem to be able to.
I have stopped it.
Okay.
You should be
awesome.
Seeing my
all right, excellent. Excellent, thank you. All right, somebody has asked to connect with Isabella Mandisa. I will send you Isabella's email address just as soon as I figure out how to. I think I pressed the wrong button there. So yes, I think this would be a good time for us to take a bit of a break, bio break, lunch break, whatever it is you would like to go off and do. We are at 10 to 12 now, which I think is quite awesome. That means that I know how to keep time. And we will have a 30-minute lunch break and come back at 20 past 12. We will still keep the room open so that you don't have to necessarily dial back in. But after the break, we will continue with 3 more of our speakers. And I invite you to ask your questions. Please ask them early while they're still talking so that I can see them as soon as we finish. And yes, keep the energy levels up. And we're going to play that song again because that always keeps me going. I hope you don't mind this song. It was my personal choice. And we'll see you again in 30 minutes. So thank you very much. Keep the chat going if you'd like. And just let's keep engaged. Let's think about the way forward because we will be asking you for your input right at the end of the program. Thank you. Have a good break. You have 30 minutes. We'll see you again at 12:20.
Jerusalema, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Jerusalema, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze, zuhambe nami. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze, dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze, zuhambe nami. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze, zuhambe nami. Jerusalema, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Jerusalema, ikhaya lami.
Hi, everyone. It is 12:20. I see people are still coming into the room, but we can start with those who are here. I just wanted to get a feel on the chat. Is everybody still engaged? Is everybody still interested out there, ready for more? Yeah, as long as you're fed and watered and comfortable and ready for more engagement, I will be very happy. So please let me know, type on the chat, tell me how it's going for you so far today before we start formally with the program. I am watching the chat. I see Michelle is happy to be back. I'm not sure about everybody else, but please let me know, please let me know. I did realize that there is one question that I missed during the last session, so we'll find a way of going back to it. Mona is definitely ready. Thank you, thank you. Yumna, very informative. Looking forward to the rest. Awesome, awesome. I'm also looking forward to what's coming next. Certainly, my point. Oh, partner in crime. Goodness. I will mention you later on my Bonnie. Vanessa, enjoyed first session and looking forward to the next. Thank you so much. Okay, more people trickling in. So what we're going to do now is go to our next speaker. I hope he is ready. Okay, I hope you're seeing my screen. Ivor, while I introduce you, you can switch your video on. So the next speaker is Ivor Barges. I had to get him to say his surname for me, so I didn't butcher it. I hope I did a good job there. Ivor is the director of the Center for Integrated Post-School Education and Training at the at the Nelson Mandela University in the Eastern Cape. His topic is on community development as emancipatory vocational education. I have to say that while we were talking to our different speakers, this is the one that really hit me. This is talking about what we can do for and with these young people once they leave vocational training. And Ivo, I should have mentioned earlier that we have a divergence of views on this conference. So you're going to hear some things that when I heard them, I was fascinated. I thought, wow, we need to look at this. So he's definitely somebody we're going to reach out to, work with in the future. Just a little bit on Ivo. He has worked in a number of universities in all subsectors of post-school education and training, and his research interests include adult and community education, higher education, workers' education, and learning in social movements. Ivo has shared a number of papers that he has written and publications that he has published, and I'm sure that he would be happy to for us to share them with our conference participants and to put them on our website. A lot of alternative thinking, complementary thinking. So it's not, it's a South African solution to the problems we have. So I'm very excited for what he's going to share with us. I can't wait. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. Please remember to post your questions while he's talking so that I'm not struggling to catch up right at the end. But yes, I invite Ivo to please address us. And Ivo, over to you.
Thanks, Mpumi, and thanks to Ilchan and all your colleagues for organizing this event. I think it is an absolutely good topic for us, and I've made some notes, and you have already opened yourself up to convene a number of other related topics, because I think there's a need for us to explore other discussions. So what I want to do is I'm, as Pumi has mentioned, I've got a fairly long history in this particular sector. I've been a government official in 1995 in Pretoria, and I've worked on a number of projects related to policy and practice in government and with civil society organizations. So the presentation that I'm going to share with you actually comes out of research work that we've done over, I would say, over a 9 to 10 year period now. And so what I'm presenting is actually not my own. It is the construction or the co-construction of knowledge through research that we have made on the discovery by being involved with communities. And so if you look at this slide, behind this slide, this is actually not, what did I say, photoshopped. These are actual boards on the road between Mthatha and Ditwa in the Eastern Cape. There's a third board actually that says, we are still waiting for you, government. But this behind the story, behind these boards, lies the stories of the relationship between vocational education practices and community development, which is often not heard, it's not seen, because it is not part of what is usually the dominant discourse around vocational education and practices. So what I want to do is I want to run through these 7 areas that I want to speak to. I will probably not make it through all my slides, but I will try, and may appear a little bit rushed from time to time. But this is what I want to cover in my presentation with you. So let me start. The first thing is if you're going to go to sleep in the next 5 minutes after lunch, I'm hoping that these are the 6 big points that you will at least remember. Firstly, I'm hoping to show you that there is an absolute need for us to build the relationship between vocational education and the needs of communities more strongly. That's the first point that I need to make. The second one is that if you do this, you have to change your gaze and depart from what is commonly a very narrow technicist and instrumentalist approach to TVET or vocational education, and it requires for us to have a far more expansive view. The current gaze, when I talk about the narrow technicist, is what some of the speakers have referred to. There's a focus on the needs of business and interest, and this represents a particular philosophical orientation to vocational education that we need to understand. But what I'm asking for is you've got to change that. If you start focusing on communities, you're going to start looking at vocational education through a very different lens. So that is the second point I want to highlight. The third one is that community development should utilize vocational education as a vehicle to address community needs and interests. And here I'm reminded by the work of the reproduction theorist Tithi Bhattacharya, who writes about life-making activities as opposed to thing-making activities. And she has highlighted, especially during the COVID pandemic now, she's highlighted the importance of, she's not talking about vocational education per se, but she's highlighting how vocational education is linked to food systems, water, health, care, nutrition, energy, shelter, and so on, which again has surfaced as during the last 4 or 5 months that we've been in lockdown and so on. The next one is that we need to look at vocational education as part of socially useful productions and work in the service of communities. So what are socially useful to people? And these relate very much to these life-making activities that vocational education could be attached to. Second last one is that social purpose or vocational education with a different philosophical orientation, a social purpose orientation, is imperative, and we need to use our collective agency to reclaim it and to use it to build a more humane world. And lastly, when I'm looking at educational institutions, what communities are telling us is that vocational education is a community good, and that institutions, both of higher learning, colleges, our community colleges, need to become more socially engaged, and we need to encourage more socially engaged forms of scholarship as well as practices. So these are the 6 key points that I want to raise as part of the discussion. Now, let me talk about, okay, so now let me talk to you about the stories of graduates. Here is a photograph. The one on to the right is actually a recent photograph of a number of students who are members of the unemployment graduates of South Africa. And the last time I checked, there were way over 250,000 graduates who are unemployed, who are members of this organization. On the left, you see a group of students proudly displaying their certificates, and all of them are unemployed, right? So there are sad stories about graduates from TVET colleges To a lesser extent, university students, but that number itself is on the increase, right? And I will share a statistic on the graduate unemployment rate with you. Then there are stories. If you go into communities and we captured some of the stories. I'm not going to read all of the stories, but it is very clear that there are problems within the TVET college system. There are problems with it. There are problems with how TVET college lecturers are being taught. And remember, this uses the term FET, and so that because the research actually took place during the time that the department was changing it from FET to TVET. So you can see how students, the feeling based on the experience of students in the TVET college sector, what they are saying about it. So here are a few, and these slides will be available to you, and you can read some of them later. And the one that was really, for me, a very important statement is the first one here, where students were saying that the post-schooling system, post-schooling is not relevant to the community. And if you look at it very carefully, you can see that TVET colleges are, not in all cases, but mainly, they are so removed from the lives of people in communities. They are not very different from many of our universities. So because they are not say socially engaged institutions, their gaze is towards the formal labor market, the needs of business and in an industry. So for me, the big mismatch, when people want to talk about the big mismatch for me is actually the mismatch between the post-schooling system and the needs of communities, right? So that, for me, that is an important point. Now, all of this, if you look at the TVET college system, in fact, you can apply this to universities. The dominant discourse in the sector, or what you hear, is that there's a linear relationship between education and the world of work. Now, there are so many studies showing us that this particular linear relationship between education and work is false. It's not true. Education is not linear, because if it was the case, then our unemployment rate should probably be 3% or something like that. But this is the dominant discourse, that education plus training plus skills will lead you into jobs. It will allow the economy to grow, and then it will create more jobs, and that will take us out of poverty and inequality. This is the dominant discourse, and this discourse is false. Here's another image showing that students will arrive at the college, they will get the skills, and they will exit, and they will be ready to take up their rightful place in the formal labor market. It is false. Now, here's a summary of the unemployment story, and I'm not going to go through all of it, but I want to highlight 3 important statistics here. Before COVID, we had approximately 16 million South Africans who are not in employment, education, and training, between the ages of 15 and 65. Now, often what governments and business people do, and some of us do the same thing, we highlight the 15 to 24 and 35. But there are people older than 35 years old who should also be counted. And I'm including that number in this particular statistic. And these people are now, that number has grown during COVID to by another 3 million. So we are actually sitting with about 19 million people who are outside the formal wage labor relations. And by the way, they are outside, most of them are falling outside of the current government skills planning mechanisms, because they are not counted, they are not in jobs. The National Skills Development Strategy focuses on a very small percentage of people who are not in workplaces, right? That's an important statistic. The other important one is the unemployment, the growing unemployment rate amongst graduate students. The government statistic says it's 33%. I think it's optimistic. We've done some research a few years ago that shows us that actually, and we've done this research work with students in the engineering field and business, and we found that just over 50% of them were actually unemployed. So that number is actually on the increase. And the third statistic that I want to share with you is the next one, is that the current unemployment rate has now hit the 30% mark. And the youth unemployment rate in the Eastern Cape, as an example, is about 70%. So this is very, very troubling. And it shows you that the labor market, the formal labor market, it is actually quite rigid. There aren't as many places available to young people. So for me, it is not a skills crisis, as we are being told, but it is actually a jobs crisis. And we have, to understand my argument, one has to look at how the economy is structured and what happens within businesses to see that education is probably the last thing on my list that has to do with the unemployment problem in our country, right? But that is another discussion. So here's a slide showing you that, and I would like some of you to look at this and read it to yourself and tell me how old you think this particular statement is. But it shows you that if you look at our society, there are a lot of work to be done. The question is why is it that people are not finding themselves in the workplace, right? So the TVET college system, where the TVET college system fits in, is that our current definition and focus on TVET is, as I've said, is based on the business needs of business and industry. It focuses on job-specific skills. It is informed by human capital theory, and it encourages people to prepare themselves for jobs that may not actually exist for them, right? And this is what is a philosophical orientation to TVET, or vocational education, which is commonly known as the social efficiency philosophy or model of vocational education. But this is one of them, right? This social efficiency model of vocational education fits perfectly within the way that government thinks about skills, how government structured this national skills development strategy, its national development plan for post-school education, the way institutions are structured, the way systems are developed, the way that educators are being trained, the way that the curricula is constructed. So the entire system of social efficiency fits squarely within this particular human capital framework that is basically is the foundation of how the state thinks about vocational education. And I'm giving you a critique and not calling for an alternative to this. Now,
Ivor, Ivor, you have 5 minutes.
Yes. Okay, all right. Okay, I want to say something about this. This is an ideological story, and we need to understand that how powerful these statements is. And so people will see that actually there are no jobs available, but they will still argue that people need education in order to get jobs. So we need to understand the ideological impact of human capital theory and how it influences vocational education. Okay, so I'm going to skip the next slide so that I can get to where I want to come to. And this is the issue around social purpose education. And social purpose education is basically saying that we need to look at vocational education in the service of community. That is what we need. And I'm going to share with you in the last few minutes things that are happening in communities that have to do with the link between vocational education and life supporting activities. Here's an actual example of people, and I've got hundreds of photographs in different places where young people and adults are establishing food systems. So they learn about agricultural practices, and there's a continuum. These food systems look different in different places depending on what people are trying to achieve. There's one. The second one is young people, TVET college students, by the way, as you can see in this diagram, in this photograph, exploring or learning about renewable energy and looking at the possibility of building renewable energy systems. The beauty of this one is you have young people from a TVET college in concert with older people from the community talking together about how can they generate renewable food systems. Linked to life-making activities, here's an example of young people learning how to set up buying and savings clubs linked to all other kinds of activities in communities. Here's a group of younger and older people in a school busy with the remakery, beginning to fix school desks, right? Here we have TVET college students in a community building a community hall, using the college facility to use the equipment, open the TVET college and get themselves involved in construction work, right? Here you have another example of peer review, participatory learning in communities. So what I want to say is, and I'm going to conclude, is that in our travels across this country during 2014, 15, and 16, we found hundreds, and I don't think we have even scratched the surface here. We found hundreds of examples of where people are busy with life-making activities. And all of those life-making activities require vocational education. And people are involved in non-formal vocational education practices to address community needs. But all of this is taking place with very limited government support. So I want to just give you one idea, leave you with one idea. We are working with a group of TVET college students right now, setting up an engineering cooperative. And the idea behind it is that these are all unemployed TVET college students, by the way. The idea is to set them up as an association who could service schools in the communities. They can service government infrastructure. They can provide a whole range of services to communities. It is a fantastic idea. It involves large numbers of young people, and it can bring them into socially productive ways of work and addressing issues within communities. So my final slide is that we need to start broadening our perspective on vocational education and accept the limitations that the very technicist social efficiency orientation is bringing to us, and to start linking vocational education to the idea of socially useful work, vocational education with production, community development as vocational education, and uniting these possibilities of hope into a tapestry towards the kind of society we want, and to ground vocational education practices, not one, whatever we could find. I think there's a variety of kinds that we can explore. We need to support them, develop them in order to address the issues, because I do think another kind of South African society is possible, and we need to work together to create that kind of society. Thank you.
Ivo, thank you very much. I have a question for you. Since I don't see questions yet in the Q&A, please post them. And the question is, how do these young people who would be involved in community development work make a living? How does it become economically viable for them, that they're not just doing this as a volunteer service to keep busy before they find a job? Because all the young people that I talk to want to find a job. How do we make this this approach economically attractive to them, that you can use your skill for community development if you can't find a job, instead of just waiting to find a job?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have all the answers. What I would propose, and my proposal is emerging out of the experiences with a few groups of young people. If you look at, if you take government budgets, for example, government is spending a fortune on maintaining those infrastructure, state infrastructure that need to be maintained. And they do this through really expensive tenders, right? So what it means is that if the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality or the development agency could alter the way that they pay for these services. So take away the tender system, for example, and allocate grants to young people's cooperatives and associations who can play a role in maintaining government infrastructure. You can bring a large number of people into forms of work. But remember, this model, talking about infrastructure, is actually quite broad. If you think about water supply, if you think about a lot of those those geysers that they have on people's roofs, that people are saying a lot of it do not even work. If you can start getting people into those kinds of interlocking associations and cooperatives, you can draw large numbers of young people into that kind of work. It won't solve the entire problem. Let's be honest. I don't think that the unemployment issue will ever go away in any society. We will always have it, but we can reduce it, and we need to find alternative ways, constantly explore a range of alternative possibilities that can bring people into forms of work so that they can make a living.
Thank you. I see a couple of questions and comments in the chat. Please put them in the Q&A. I will go through these two though. The first one is from Farrell, and he says, I think Ivor puts a very important challenge to much of the discourse we have heard earlier today. This speaks to a much broader understanding of education, training, and development, as we call it. Would the foundation be open to another platform engagement that is about life, also beyond the marketplace job salvation? I think that's a question for me rather than you, Ivo. and the answer is yes, definitely open to this. We are engaging with our alumni, young people that have been through our programs, our after-school programs in the past, trying to find out where they are, what they're doing now, years later. And when I first engaged with Ivo, the first thought I had was, we have a pool of young people that are probably going to tell us we're unemployed, we're looking for something to do. And this for me is an opportunity to come up with something quite innovative that we can offer to them and engage with government around. So definitely open to a further discourse on this and to see how we take action on it. Actually, we're speaking to somebody on Monday about this who are looking for innovative projects to fund. So very excited, and I already primed Ivo for further discussion about it. The next one from Nomhle, my concern is that the panelists rarely make reference to the community college structure and the role thereof. Is this because there's no clear understanding of this third tier of the Department of Higher Education and Training?
Yeah, well, I haven't made reference to it, but I have spent probably most of my life in government as well as in academia on community colleges, community education, the public adult learning centers. I've written several pieces on it. The problem with this community colleges is that it is the absolute stepsister of the education system and the post-school education system, alongside early childhood development and so on. It's very, very poorly funded. It's weak. And there's a need for us to mobilize communities, civil society organizations to strengthen the role that community colleges could play. And they can play an important role. And I think the relationship between TVET colleges and community colleges need to be strengthened. But at the moment, if the post-school budget is going to be cut, the first place where they do it is at community colleges. I agree. I think it has to play an important role. It can bring large numbers of education people into forms of non-formal, by the way, non-formal as well as formal education. And we need to find ways to strengthen that system.
Awesome, thank you very much. Any last comment from you, Ivo? I don't have any more questions for you that I can see.
Well, no, I think I'll stop there. I think maybe some questions will return later on and we can engage with them as they come.
Okay, sorry, I actually did miss one. And it says, at this point, do we try and disrupt the educational system? There is such a stigma from our youth to work in the skills sector. How and where do we start this conversation?
Well, I suppose I wouldn't, I would probably not use the word disrupt, but I would definitely want to argue and support a case where we need to ask for the system to be transformed. Especially when it comes to non-formal forms of education. There's more non-formal vocational education happening in communities than in the institutions. I can tell you that. We have seen too many examples, but there's no support for that. So we need to try and get government and communities to see the value that vocational education play in the lives of communities. That is what we need to do. And we need to encourage people to participate in establishing forms of life-making projects with or without the support of government. At the moment, South Africa is a country that has a very, very vibrant civil society organization. And we can see it now, even during the COVID pandemic, with the COVID-19 coalition, for example. We need to use these civil society organizations to strengthen participation around community development for using vocational education as a vehicle to change things.
Thank you, Ivo. Last question. How do you commit young people to handwork or hard work? I'm not sure, because they don't seem to be willing. So maybe technical work.
You know, I think people have different experiences. I have heard people say that young people are lazy, they don't want to work and so on. But then in other cases, I have worked and seen young people who are extraordinary, very, very active. And right there in Cape Town, you have the Bonteheuwel example involving large numbers of young people in food systems development, for example, right now. So I think young people have become victims of a system that is designed not to accommodate them. And we need to encourage them and to show them that if this person is talking about the hand, I don't believe that you work with your hands and then you think with your brain as if the two organs are disconnected. There is no practice without theory, and there's no theory without practice. So that idea that people in TVET colleges learn how to work with their hands is an incomplete story. They actually do work with their heads, with their hands, and with their hearts. They use their entire bodies in this process. So I think we need to help people to dispel this notion that young people, that even TVET colleges or vocational education doesn't require you to think, or this idea that students are lazy. And I'm prepared to say that I work in an institution, and I can say that a lot of my colleagues or people in high positions are very lazy. They can do much more. So, and I think we all have the right, to be lazy. But when I use the word lazy, I mean that we all need a break. Laziness for me is part of who we are. It's part of life. We work and then we rest. So the leisure and the laziness is part of the rhythms of life. So let us encourage, let's not drop our youth. Let's encourage them, pull them in. It's a long process. It's not going to happen overnight, but we have to use our agency to mobilize the energy of the youth, because they're the future. And we need to start recognizing that they need to take our society into the next century and the century thereafter.
Thanks, Ivo. We've got a couple of more questions that have come in, so I'm going to take some liberty with the time. This one is very related to what you just said. When it comes to continuing to create programs for young people, why is it that these are often created in rooms where young people's voices aren't represented, though they are the target market being created for? How do we mobilize institutions and foundations to co-create development initiatives with young people?
Yeah, well, that's a loaded question. I think one place that we may have to work on is this kind of people working from a deficit position. So they look at people as having some kind of a deficiency. So you know what it is that they need, and you know how to do it. I discourage, and I often say that knowledge production is a mutual process. We are co-constructors of knowledge. We need to find and develop more democratic ways to bring young people into solidaristic practices, including the way we think about what needs to be done, how we conceptualize projects, and how to systematically bring students into as key players and agents in making life and bringing about transformation in society. I think that might be a way that we can start as organizations, and we should be open to tell donors, not to dictate to us what it is, how money should be allocated. They must allow organizations to create possibilities and to be the architects of the projects that they want to develop. And when they work with young people, is to find the most democratic, solidaristic, participatory way of getting projects and work off the ground. I'm not sure whether I'm answering the question, but I can't read the question, so that is my response. I'm sorry if I haven't answered the question.
Last one, do you think CETAs have made a valuable contribution in the TVET and in VST?
Well, I think remember up till about 2009, there was a position in the Department of Education at the time that CETAs should not really play much of a role in the life of TVET colleges. Although they did, the position was half-hearted at the time. It is only really since Zamandi became the minister that money started to be channeled into TVET colleges, and we see CETA offices, for example, being located within TVET colleges. So it might be, and most of these only really started to take an effect after 2010, 2011. So it might be early days to say, because these things do take quite a bit of time. So it might be unfair to say that the CETAs haven't. So I think they could make a much bigger contribution. And I would personally think that they need to they need to play a bigger role in connecting TVET colleges far more firmly with communities, so that they become more socially engaged institutions that also focus on the needs of communities and not to be so narrowly focused on the needs of business.
Ivor, thank you very much. There are a couple more comments, but I will leave it there for now in the interest of time. Thank you. We will continue this conversation. I think, as others have mentioned, probably worth further discussion with the wider group as well. So yes, we'll see how we make that happen. We would like to introduce you to yet another one of our young people in our programs. So Ilshan, if you can cue up the video for us, please, before we go.
My name is Sivuile, and I'm from Gugulethu, which is a township. For anyone who doesn't know Gugulethu is quite dangerous. It's close to Nyanga Township. Nyanga is the highest metal capital in the world. So you can imagine how it is living that side. I'm currently 21 years old, and my ultimate dream is to become a celebrity chef, get exposed to working with more chefs around the world, learn more about food, and obviously become a head chef at the hotel that I'm working at currently, which is the Vineyard Hotel.
Sivuile really wanted to be in the kitchen. You could see he was excited about that. He has a presence when he's in the kitchen, and he felt comfortable. And you could see he really wanted to engage with our chef, who works closely with the students. And right from the early stages, you could see it was a passion. It wasn't just an opportunity for a job. He really felt that this is what he wants to do.
I got to ask a lot of questions, got to get more experience just from asking and all that, and talking to people and Chef Paul. When you get here, they don't just only like interact with you when you're here. They do talk on social media with you, try to keep up with what you're actually doing now. Whenever you go for internships, they always like inspire you to wake up and go there, even if you're getting work experience. So they like pushing you to go there.
It's not just about giving them the skill and spending time with them here at the foundation. There is a huge element where, as facilitators, we need to provide mentorship for these youngsters. So, the bonus is when they've been with us for about 3 months and we find them an internship opportunity, or even get them into a job, which is fantastic, they still need us to mentor them. A lot of them don't have the support network in their own homes, and it can be very daunting going into the workplace without any guidance. Not only the negative side that we need to mentor, but also the excitement and the positive side, is when these youngsters are succeeding in their job, they want to tell somebody.
So when I started in hospitality, I was nervous because, yes, I do cook, I'm a wife, but I was like, oh my goodness, lots of cooking and skills for knives and all of that. But then I plugged into Chef Paul. Yeah, he became my mentor. I became more confident to speak in front of people, to do presentations which I was never comfortable with, and it all went well.
The AGYI Foundation is your second home. They make you feel comfortable. They are loving people and caring people. When you fall, they are there to help. They're always there to give you a second chance in life.
I think this program has been amazing because I started with nothing and I have a certificate, I have skills, I have currently a year employment, so I think I'm really blessed.
It's really great to witness most people get developed and actually change their own lives, and also being a contributing citizens of this country, seemingly that even before COVID-19, we are in a very, very bad situation when it comes to youth. So for me to play that kind of a role to make sure that youth is actually getting help at AGYI Foundation, for me, I so wish that AGYI Foundation can grow throughout the country.
The AGYI Foundation has such a big impact on young people's lives, more than we realize. And I think even though I've been here for 6 years, I still get goosebumps when I look at some of these youngsters and the journeys that they've been on. You know, we are not only giving them skills, but we are giving them a sense of community. We are giving them a new family, and also giving them the belief that they can change their lives.
Thank you, Ilshan. So we are going to move on now to our next speaker, Nigel Prinsloo, who is a lecturer and researcher at the and works for the Institute of Post-School Studies at the University of Western Cape. His topic is VST post-COVID-19 challenges and opportunities. There's been comments about community colleges, and one of the things that's interesting about Nigel is that he teaches in his own time at a community college, so perhaps he can speak about that as well. Over the past few years, he's been involved in a number of initiatives related to the development and support of recognition of prior learning, as well as TVET and adult education and training sectors. So he's going to speak to us. Nigel, I hope your video is on already. I'm sorry that I've eaten into your time a little bit. I will make it up for you.
No problem, no problem. Thanks everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to share with you. Just a disclaimer, I have aged since that last photograph you see of me. I was just thinking, reflecting on what Ivor said and a number of the other speakers. Three things before I get into my presentation. The one is that we're into a new normal. And what does this normal mean? And what voices are we going to take forward with us? Because we cannot do things the way it has been done. I do believe this is a critical juncture when we are able to now engage and hopefully chart a new path moving forward. The other one is particularly considering our colleagues with regards to the nonprofit and NGO sector, who does a tremendous amount of work with communities, is that unfortunately in South Africa's social development arena, the road has been littered with a number of projects that has shown incredible potential, but has not gone beyond the pilot phase. And then the whole notion about the skills gap versus the social gap, and what do we need to be able to bring those two things together. So into the slides, and I'll try and be as brief and as focused as possible. One thing also I want to say thank you to the AGYI Foundation for is these interspersing the presentations with these videos of your alumni and the hope that inspires. And I think it's important that we continue to inspire that hope amongst ourselves and amongst the communities that we serve. So, okay, if I can move to the first slide. Thank you. What I've done there is I've kind of pulled out a couple of Skills Development Act, as well as the D8 pronouncement on VET. And I just highlighted a few things that I think are important, and I think it echoes what has gone before, is according to D8 that VET is a continuum of socially and economically necessary and desirable technical knowledge, skills, and competencies. And often what we're missing is that issue around socially necessary, and the need to develop that. With regards to workplace learning and the notion of where workplaces are, and the role that that faith organizations and social movements can play in establishing that workplaces as well. And then the whole notion of skills development. And I think what has come quite to the fore is the notion of self-employment. But we cannot have self-employment unless we encourage our alumni in terms of pursuing that. The focus of TVET has constantly been preparing young people for the world of work. And as my slides will begin to show, and as it's gone before, that world of work has become quite narrow. So with that in mind, I've decided to take the liberty of pulling out photographs of a tunnel that we've got close to Cape Town, which is called the Huguenot Tunnel. We're going to look at 3 phases as we move through that. And as we exit the tunnel, what are the options open to us? Okay, so if we can move to the next slide. I've decided to call this entering the tunnel, and I've called it the past. Sorry. And I've thought about our matriculants from 2019. And if we go back, what we will see is that they entered grade 1 in 2008. And in our public schooling system, we had 1,990,254 students in grade 1. By the time they reached grade 12, and I think it's echoed in previous stats as well, 505,000 students wrote the exam, of which 409,804 passed. And I'm asking myself the question, what do we mean by success? And you can see the statistics there. The question we have to ask ourselves is, what happened to the 680,540 students? Where did they go? We know about ASET, adult continuing education and training. We know about TVET, and we know about higher education, but there's a lot of other learning that happens outside those areas. And we need to try and think about a way in which we can synergize in addressing those kinds of issues. Okay, thank you. Next slide. At the moment, we are kind of, in South Africa, we're kind of exiting the tunnel as we speak. Those figures are based on the COVID infection rates of on the 25th. Of course, that has gone up slightly. But of course, that has had fundamental impacts in terms of our economy and our social life. Interestingly enough, in March 2020, the unemployment stats stood at 30.1%, but more importantly at 59.1% for a youth aged 15 to 24. The 5-month lockdown has also exacerbated, also enforced the move to online learning, particularly in our schooling system. And the result of that, of course, is that it's exacerbated the inequalities in our country. In addition to the COVID pandemic, shall we call it the quadruple threat of gender-based violence, poverty, inequality, and racism has once again also come to the fore, with around 3 million South Africans projected to lose their jobs, including banking and retail. We've heard that coming through. That, of course, also has fundamental impacts, for example, for organizations that are funded via government and via donor funding. With reduced funding and income, what does it mean for programs moving forward? And also for our students or the current alumni that we have, what does it mean in terms of access to resources as well as funding and opportunities to grow? So through the tunnel, what we've discovered is that the issues have become a lot more starker, but at the same time, it's allowed for innovative opportunities that many of us can begin to attest to as we move forward. If I can move to the next slide. So the question arises in terms of what are the possibilities as we exit this tunnel together. And I'd like to emphasize for our students, particularly our young people, the notion of vocational, digital, we call them E, and social entrepreneurship. We have identified already the challenge with regards to the provision within our TVET colleges. The focus is particularly around the occupational programs, notably the NCV and as well as the NATED programs, but they also have their particular challenges. And what we need to look at is how do we broaden those competencies that our students come out with a more social focus. The initiative that Iva has mentioned, also there are initiatives happening within the Western Cape with regards to servicing and helping local communities, and where colleges, TVET colleges in particular, can become involved. However, these kinds of initiatives are not as extensive as they should be. The whole notion about digital entrepreneurship, encouraging young people to begin to look at the digital space whereby they can also become involved, is already happening within a number of NPO training organizations within communities, and these needs to be extended. The issue around social entrepreneurship, there was a key part that was mentioned with regards to the VET, the DET proposal on VET, and that's the notion of what is socially necessary. How do we begin to create those spaces whereby communities and younger people can become involved as cooperatives, and also source funding for that? There has been, what is interesting is way back when the CETAs were established, there was this notion around a social CETA which never came to the fore. And I think the space whereby we're able to develop our young people and our communities more and make it more socially beneficial becomes important. For our institutions, and this includes both in non-governmental organizations, higher education institutions, the post-school sector, what is going to become more important is what I call the 3 Ps. And often the first one is around what is our youth perception with regards to vocational education, for example. There is a shift that recognizes that away from universities, that there are skills that are needed to enable young people to become productive. And productive I use here in the broadest possible sense. We also need to look at the programs that we are currently offering. Are those programs beneficial to the communities that they serve? With the shifts happening within industry, I think we need to look more broadly, not alone at what industry demands or what the economy demands, but also what communities are needing. Issues around pricing, I know that's often a contentious issue, but at the same time, we need to enable that. You need to ensure that we have sufficient funding for initiatives that are being offered. And how do we source those kinds of funds are part of the challenge. And that links to the 4th P, which is around partnerships. I believe that out of the challenges of the COVID pandemic, and with reduced funding, partnerships are going to become more and more important. I think at the same time, it's important for our NPOs to remain true to their mandate and their calling and the area of focus, as they begin to look at other alternatives whereby they can partner with other institutions and so create opportunities for articulation between the vocational streams as well as other streams that may be important, particularly around issues of sustainability. I want to try and keep it as focused as possible. And therefore, I found this interesting citation from Christine Pamper, who looks at the future of jobs. And what she begins to say is that influential trends that will shape jobs in the future include, and I've highlighted a few of them, global integration, technological innovation, and aging, but I've added in a younger population, particularly in South Africa, collaboration and cross-disciplinarity, increased participation of women in the labor force, and the continued economic shift to Asia. Well, my argument is that Africa will become the new, in the next few years, I'm hoping for that. Also a focus in terms of development. The scarcity of natural resources and migration. All of those highlighted parts will become important as we begin to chart the way forward. We need to look for African solutions to address African problems. The same applies in South Africa as an example. We need to look at ways in which we're able to cooperate so that we reduce, so that when we introduce programs, they are both sustainable and benefits the societies that they serve. So in conclusion, the last slide, we are at a crossroads. We are at a fork in the road at the moment, and the choices that we make will determine our way forward as we look at the post-COVID-19 opportunities that lie ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Are there any questions for Nigel? I'm trying to see. I think perhaps while we're waiting for some questions, I'd like to read a couple of comments that came through previously around young people, because I thought that those were so important. One was, we need to inspire our youth in cooperative community building practices rather than the mostly competitive ways of winner takes all mentality as the post-COVID new way. Another one, many youth have lost hope, and it's mostly the fault of the system that is in many cases unsupported. Then we make the youth the problem, like the jobs problem, not the skills problem, illogic. Another one that I think was worth reading, realistically, this is from Ayanda, I believe we cannot expect our young people to embody and carry on development systems they weren't involved in co-creating. If they are not being heard in the decision-making rooms, how do they ever expect them to understand and contribute productively in the long-term vision? Leaders of tomorrow need to be groomed in the boardrooms and project teams today.
Yeah.
So any last comments from you in terms of the way forward post-COVID?
I think the whole issue around partnerships comes to the fore here. No particular sector within the post-school and vocational training sector can claim knowledge and ownership. I think there are ways in which we need to break down the barriers that separate us, public and private, NPO and faith-based organizations. And I think what is important that came out of that final statement is listen to the voices of the people that we're serving. Because at the end of the day, I think they know a lot more than what we think we know. So that is my 2 cents worth. And thank you once again for the opportunity to speak at your conference.
Nigel, there is one more that came through from Britt. Please elaborate on the digital space you mentioned.
Okay. I think one thing that's interesting is that my involvement with young people, particularly in terms of my community college, the class that I teach, is the availability all of my students basically have smartphones. And so, for example, one of my students, is an artist, and her particular interest is how does she grow that that particular area, and this, what we were talking about and looking into was using Facebook as a means to basically, and we know these things, as a means to basically market herself. So the digital space, in the absence of the physical spaces that are available, the digital space becomes an important environment whereby cooperatives can become partners and attract not only customers but partnerships in a way of driving forward their products. The other notion, of course, is digital space, as has been done in a number of initiatives within NPOs, coding, web design, and often these things are done in not necessarily taught in a formal sense, but it's gained traction within communities. And so yeah, that's the digital space that I'm talking about.
Awesome, thank you very much. I don't see any more questions. So Nigel, thank you for your contribution. Again, looking forward to further engagement with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a minor adjustment to the program and hope that Cassie is ready to speak. If I can just quickly introduce him. Very excited again, conversations that we've had prior to coming to this conference. Cassie Kruger is the regional manager for the Department of Higher Education and Training. He is responsible for the Western Cape and the Northern Cape. The word stigma has been mentioned a few times in this conversation, and that is basically going to be his talk on how do we remove the stigma that's attached to vocational skills training. In terms of his background, Cassie is a qualified teacher. He was appointed as principal of the South Peninsula Technical College in '94. He's also been the CEO of False Bay TVET College, and is now currently regional manager, as I mentioned, for the Department of Higher Education and Training. Cassie, if you're ready, if you can please switch on your video so we can see you, and I can hand over to you.
Good afternoon. Can I just try and share my screen?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, I just hope now it would open, or let me just get it here.
We can see it.
Can you see it properly now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, good afternoon. Pumi, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for the AGYI Foundation for inviting me. I must say that as I was listening this morning to I think a legitimate critique against TVET colleges, I got a little bit depressed at a point, and I thought, looking at my topic and knowing that I'm from the department, I thought at a point maybe I should pick up some connectivity problems rather and disappear. But the presentation that I'm going to do this afternoon is, and I know that most of the delegates are from your non-government organizations, and therefore my presentation is going to focus more on what the department are doing currently and what is our plans to a large extent around the addressing youth unemployment, and I hope that will give people a better notion of what colleges are doing. One of the things that I must get out of the way right at the beginning is this notion that training creates jobs. Training do not create jobs. And the fact that we have such large unemployment or so very few jobs in our country relatively is in actual fact creating big challenges for the training that TVET colleges specifically are focusing on. And I think that will become clearer. I put this slide on deliberately to give you some background of the education landscape. Before 2009, we had one Department of Education. In 2009, after President Zuma took office, a decision was made, and it came from, I think, the ANC Policy Conference, to split the department into two. And after 2009, we started establishing the Department of Higher Education and Training. And as most of you now know, schools are a provincial competency, therefore the MECs in the province plays a critical role, while the Department of Higher Education and Training deals with universities, CETAs, TVET colleges, and community colleges. Now, at the moment, we've got 50 TVET colleges in South Africa, and we've just established 9 community colleges. Now, when you listen to the research and some of the presenters this morning, you know, at a point when we established FET colleges in 1998, I think, one of the problems that we had is people just took what they knew about TVET colleges and they applied it to the FET colleges in those years. And the FET colleges up till from 1994 up to 2009 used to be provincial competencies. And the mandate of the then FET colleges was strongly influenced by the school's agenda. And in actual fact, in that period, there was a total divorce from the then FET colleges that was provincial competencies and the CETAs that used to fall under the Department of Labor. And we are still struggling with that divorce at this day and age. But after we started establishing the Department of Higher Education and Training in 2009, CETAs were moved from the Department of Labor to the newly established Department of Higher Education and Training. Your TVET colleges started migrating from being provincial competencies to national competencies. And after 2015, we established the community colleges. So the 3 training institutions, public training institutions in the post-school sector, universities, TVET colleges, community colleges are all in the same crawl now, and CETAs are also part of that grouping. So the collaboration between these institutions are improving. Now, especially in the TVET colleges, the collaboration with CETAs. Now, if you look at, in 2013, we established the white paper on post-school education training was approved by Cabinet. Now, and it's only then that we got the marching orders to change from being FET colleges to become TVET colleges. And I think we must be careful to take the experience that we've got about TVET colleges and just assume that this is what TVET colleges are going to do. It was not just a name change. After 2015, you would find that the collaboration between TVETs and CETAs became much closer. But in the white paper, when it looked at the mandate of the Department of Higher Education, clearly states that it's the function of the Department of Post-School Education, which sits under higher education, to cater for all adults, those who have completed school, which is mainly your universities, those who did not complete school, but at least have a grade 9 qualification, that is mainly the mandate of your TVET colleges, and then those students, adults who's never been at school, up to those people who do not have a grade 9 qualification, is what our community colleges would mainly focus on. So this is to cater for the whole ambit and making sure that adults are reintroduced into the system through one of these institutions. The department is placing in the government a high premium on your TVET colleges and your community colleges. In actual fact, if we look at the National Development Plan and you look at your white paper on post-school education training, the growth targets of TVET colleges is we need to reach 2.5 million by 2030. That will make TVET colleges, the number of students at TVET colleges, more than the number of students at universities, which is also beginning to address that incorrect spread of our post-school institutions. TVET colleges should grow to 1 million. Now, we know that these targets are based on economic growth. We'll probably not achieve it, but the concept is there that TVET colleges will have to grow much faster than universities and your CET colleges, which is more focusing on communities. And I think that the notion that Ivan had about responding to community needs is more in the mandate of your CET colleges. They will also focus more on non-formal courses and not as much on formal training as what we find in your TVET colleges. Both these institutions, TVET and CET colleges, are regulated by the Continuing Education Training Act, and that act compels colleges to ensure that we give access to people, women that we marginalized in the past, disabled and the disadvantaged. So that is to a large extent our focus target. One of the most critical things that is in the 2013 white paper, which is beginning to also shape the way that we train at colleges, and I'll just quote this out of the white paper. It says, since the main purpose of TVET colleges is to prepare students for the workplace and or self-employment, it's essential that they develop and maintain close working relationships with employers. So the white paper is clearly saying colleges cannot train in a vacuum. They will have to train within a partnership with employers. And the white paper acknowledges that the work integrated training model is the most effective training model, which is not different than what we've heard this morning of a type of training model, which is a dual system where part of the training takes place in the workplace, part of the training takes place in the college. Now, why the stigma? And I'm just going to sit on this a little bit. In spite of numerous public statements by more than one Minister of Higher Education Training, more than one Deputy Minister of Higher Education Training, that colleges should be the institutions of first choice, many school leavers still have a negative perception, and it prevails. Now, why is that there? I think out of my experience, we find that most individuals that influence the career or further study options in your teachers in schools, parents, have no first-hand experience of colleges. They know about schools, they know about universities, but colleges are foreign to them. And colleges are very complex institutions. The general public seems not to be able to distinguish between good and bad colleges or functional and dysfunctional colleges, while the community are able to distinguish between functional and dysfunctional schools and functional universities and dysfunctional universities. So if there's bad publicity about the school sector, people tend to say, okay, but it's not my school. It's not the school where my children are going. Or it's not the university that I used to be at. It's the other university. But if there's negative publicity around colleges, it tends to be that we smear all the colleges over the same comb. I think there's also a little bit of problem that the study period of the majority of students is very short. Some students only spend 6 months, maybe a year at the college, and therefore they don't form a lifelong association with the institution. People would often say, I'm a graduate of a certain school, or I'm a graduate of a specific university, but you often don't find people speaking that way of TVET colleges because they seem not to be able to form that lifelong association because of the short period that they spend there. There is a perception that college graduates find it more difficult to find employment than university graduates. I think we must take it from an angle of the same person. If you ask a person that cannot get into engineering at university, that cannot get into a medical doctor degree, that cannot do a CA courses or chartered accountant, and that person then chooses to do a BA degree in languages, instead of maybe becoming a plumber, I'm still convinced being a plumber is going to increase your job opportunities considerably. And that's what we find often. People do all types of programs at universities. They also find it difficult to get jobs. But we often want to compare the college graduate with the university medical doctor or engineer or chartered accountant. There's a perception that colleges are for students that struggle academically. It's not true. Colleges, in most of our engineering courses, you have to have maths at school to get in nowadays. It's not about people that struggle academically, and that the technical field are getting more and more sophisticated. Then another one is the low program costs. Creates the perception of cheap programs, especially nowadays, even with bursaries. It's costing in the region of 80,000 Rand per college student per year. But because the state funds it so well, we often create the impression that it is not, it is low cost programs. And then there's this perception of low, that it's academic dead end. I'm not going to go into this. I just wanted to indicate quickly, at colleges, we have basically three types of program. The so-called vocational programs, which is funded by the state, where students get NSFAS bursaries. The occupational programs, which is funded by CETAs or NSF, which is your learnerships, your apprenticeships. There's no NSFAS bursaries there, but often students don't pay any fees because it's funded, fully funded. And then some colleges are also doing higher education, higher certificates, and in some colleges, even degrees. All being funded through different sources, all being regulated or quality assured by different bodies. So it's quite a complex environment. I just wanted to show you the vocational programs, which was developed at the point when colleges were still in a provincial competency. It was very much focused on international experience, that after grade 9, students should have a choice to either follow academic route or a vocational route, and that's in the concept that it was developed and introduced. It's a whole range of programs. It's a 3-year program, and it ranges from electrical engineering programs to information technology, finance, hospitality, safety and society, which was developed in collaboration with the South African Police, early childhood development, tourism, primary healthcare, ICT, etc. So it's a whole range of programs. The ones that I highlighted in blue is the ones that is your traditional apprenticeships or leading to artisans. If you look at the native programs, you're in 1, 2, and 3, the entrance requirement, they differ from college to college, but colleges will consider grade 10, if you've got grade 10 or grade 11 or grade 12. And basically a student would spend in 1, 2, and 3, 3 trimesters at the college. They obtain their qualification, but nowadays colleges in collaboration with CETAs are forced to a large extent, and principals, part of their performance agreement, to then find job placement opportunities for these learners so that they can complete their qualification to do the trade test and become full-fledged artisans. Your N4 to N6 courses are semester courses. Typically, there a student would spend 18 months at a college. Then the colleges will assist the student to be placed for 18 months. And after 3 years, the person gets a diploma. So your native courses, although strictly spoken, standing alone, they are vocational programs that leads to qualification in both cases. And the one linked to your artisan, the other one, and a trade test, the other one linked to your diploma. There is a responsibility on colleges to place these students. And we are lucky nowadays that your CETAs are coming on board in a big way, and we are working very close with them so that they can fund these students during those intern periods. Occupational programs, sorry, yeah, I see 5 minutes.
Yes.
Thank you. Occupational programs are more, it's your programs that's funded by CETAs. It's more responsive because the programs were developed by CETAs in collaboration with industry, and colleges, and this is Western Cape colleges, offers a wide range of these programs, and I think it's more for you to read afterwards. I just want to share with you a new development because we know work integrated learning is the way that we need to go. There's a new development at UTV colleges, and we started introducing that this last year, and that is the introduction of the so-called 821 learnerships. Now, the 821 learnership is nothing different than the old apprenticeship to a large extent, or the integrated approach that we find in Germany. In these certificates, occupational certificates, students spend a minimum of 20% in a classroom environment where they get knowledge information. Then they spend a minimum of 20% in a workshop environment, probably in most cases still at the college, and they then must spend 20% minimum per year at the institution. And what's interesting about these programs is that the businesses take the leads. The colleges cannot enroll the students unless there's already a business or that has signed up the student. The only challenge with this is that it's very difficult to massify, but we are using these programs at the DHET to begin to introduce occupational programs and fund occupational programs at UTV colleges. Now, the way that we are doing it, we focused on 13 priorities trades, which was identified as critical needs to kickstart the economy, to grow the economy, to assist your local government, to support projects like water on leaks and so on. So colleges started introducing these programs in a concept of a center of specialization last year. And the whole purpose is to bring employers on board as partners, to mainstream occupational programs, and to also increase the quality of artisans in our country. And as I said, we focus on the 13 priority trades. We are doing this in collaboration with industry, and in this specific project, we've got specific institutions that are supporting us in this regard. Getting to your CET colleges, as I said earlier, CET colleges focus mainly on those students that's never been at school, adults, up to a point where they don't have grade 9 to enter TVET colleges. So currently, these programs that we offer at the colleges, at your community college, ABET level 1, 2, 3, which is, and then also, which is equivalent to grade 1, 2, and 3. ABET level 2 is equivalent to grade 4, 5. ABET level 3, 6, 7. And ABET level 4 is equivalent to grade 8 and 9, which means such a student can get into a TVET college. We still, to a large extent, have second chance opportunities where people also can do a matric certificate at a college. I'm not going to go into this detail, but you can look at that for interesting sake afterwards. I just also need to mention that colleges also focus on entrepreneurship. Some of our colleges have centers of entrepreneurship where they even help co-ops to grow their businesses and create more jobs. Colleges also have introduced bridging programs to assist NEET students, those students that's been out of the system for a long period, to get them back into the system and bridge their knowledge gaps that they have. We are improving access with students with disability. We are looking at different delivery modes. Most colleges now offer classes in the days and in the evenings. We are busy expanding on e-learning initiatives. We are looking also at in some cases, the establishment of joint employment centers where businesses can go to a one-stop shop and employ graduates from colleges. And then what's critical for us is international partnerships. Now, just to finish off, what will change this negative perception? I think one of the things that we are working on is a concept of grading of colleges. And I'm sorry, I just want to stop this thing. The grading of colleges, which should be in the public domain. And grading is actually saying that college is better than that college because of the following reasons. And I think we must be publicly accountable for the outcomes. And that would be things like, for example, the exam results, financial management in the institutions, etc. Responsive programs and curricula that can be adapted within a short time frame. I think that is critical. Moving over to occupational programs, introducing occupation programs will help a lot with that. Colleges are beginning to, on an annual basis, have a robust PQM planning process. deciding what programs they're going to offer next the following year. And I can assure you that job placement statistics plays a critical role in that. Let me just go down to right at the bottom. We know there's a problem at the moment which we need to remove from the department, and that's timeous issuing of certificates. And then we will have to also, and we're working very hard on this, on getting clear articulation with universities. We are improving our student selection to make sure that students just don't come to the college because they want to be at the college, but they would rather want to be directed to the most appropriate program. I think colleges will also must use the opportunity to embrace technology, specifically the fourth industrial revolution. I think that could also change the image of colleges. And then obviously we'll have to profile success stories, and there's many of those stories out there. There's many students that obtained PhDs that came through the college sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cassie. We are going to move on to Q&A. I don't see questions quite yet. What I would like to ask you is, what role do you see nonprofits, non-government organizations playing in this space? And how do we collaborate?
No, I wanted to say that in my introduction, but I left it out because I was hoping one of the NGOs will ask it. And thank you for that question. I think, you know, to get funding for training, especially NGOs, is becoming, I think, quite challenging. And you'll find that our minister is also steering a seat of funding to TVET colleges in the first place, because he's trying to build a strong public system. And therefore, if I was at an NGO, and colleges are open to that, is not to go alone, but to establish strong partnerships with your TVET colleges and your community colleges. I think it's going to be much easier if you find a good partner in one of those public institutions to assist even with approaching the National Skills Fund, or, for example, a CETA for funding, if you do it in a collaborative way. And then secondly, I think many of your NGOs tends to do programs that is not necessarily accredited on the NQF. And therefore it's critical that if you do have those type of programs where your intention is that a student should be able to carry on with his studies, is that you establish a link with the college where there's an agreement that if a student from your institution has done X, Y, and Z, and you'll have to hear what the colleges say and what are their requirements, then they would to a large extent be able to maybe guarantee a student coming through that process into access into the college. I think we must be careful that we don't, that these students don't end up in a type of a dead end. So colleges would be open to that, and we must make sure that there's a career path for these students, especially those ones that you're dealing with in the NGOs, and you're doing good work out there. I'm aware of a college in the area that I am in that has already got a partnership with one or two of those type of NGO institutions where they guarantee access once the student has done a program. I hope that answers your question for me.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. A question from Ivo. Why is there such a reluctance to support non-formal programs?
Yeah, unfortunately, we have a history in our country. And it was mainly in the apartheid period that many institutions trained people, but those people didn't have any certificates, no formal qualification. And it's often formal businesses that did that. The unintended consequence, or maybe the intended consequence, I'm not sure, was that a person got trapped in that institution. You worked for, and I'm just going to use a name now, and I'm not saying they did it. You worked for Volkswagen, for example. You were trained by Volkswagen, and you are actually a very good mechanic. But because that certificate doesn't have currency when you move outside that environment and you want to apply for a job at Ford, then it's not transferable. And therefore, people often got caught in positions where they didn't get paid what they are worth because they didn't have the option to leave. And there was a very strong push at a point in our country that people should have, that every qualification that you do should have some credit value. I think we've reached a point now where we're moving beyond that. In colleges' case, it's very difficult to get any funding from any CETA. I would say nearly impossible if it doesn't lead to an accredited program. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to get it from the NSF. Obviously, from the DHT is only funded programs at the moment. But I think in your CET colleges, the intention is to also push, and we're pushing hard, for non-formal programs that is responsive to the needs of specific communities. The only challenge that we will have to deal with is sometimes the funding of those programs. But I'm sure as we are moving and the system in your CET college are maturing, we might find that there will be more funding opportunities opening up from the DHCT to fund your CET college for those type of initiatives, because we can't always rely on external funding. Okay.
Thank you, Cassie. Yes, another one, if I can just, oopsie. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it now. There has also been referencing to the warehousing of youth in TVET colleges and CETs. How do we change this? Because it adds to the stigma of TVETs and CETs.
I'm not sure, Pumi, you'll have to explain to me what do we mean by warehousing.
I am not sure. I think, Ivo, if you can expand on that one, that would be helpful. One from Nomhle, thanks for highlighting the role of colleges in your presentation, including community colleges. There is a bigger role that community colleges can play in the skills revolution due to their nature, the nature of them based in the communities and the flexibility of programs.
I can just say that, Pumi, that traditionally your community colleges comes from the old adult learning centers, which has been combined in a specific province to form the community college. They are still in their infant shoes, and they are not well funded, unfortunately, at the moment. But the reality is that well, I think those colleges, we are going to get better funding for those colleges. We are looking at better infrastructure, and those colleges will also begin to introduce skills programs. Many of them has already. Some of them have been funded very well through various projects to introduce skills programs. The only challenge that they don't always have the necessary infrastructure. But I can also just say that in our specific region, and I'm sure it's in the other regions, when we meet with principals of colleges, we make sure that we meet with both the TVET college principals and the CET college principals in one room. Because on the short term, to introduce skills training, we might find that your CET colleges will have to partner with your TVET colleges to a certain extent. So yes, that collaboration is beginning to happen.
Awesome. So more clarity on that comment around warehousing of youth in TVET colleges and in CETs. There's an increase in the number of enrollments, but these students don't find work. They are perceived as holding cells of the youth to keep them off the streets.
Yeah, you know the problem is if you purely train based on the needs out there, then I think we will have to probably train less people, because the jobs is a problem. As I said earlier, we're now beginning to force colleges. And one of the questions that we ask colleges when they present the program qualification mix, which is the programs that they intend offering, let's say next year, as well as the number of the enrollments next year, is we are beginning to ask them, show us your job placement statistics of the previous year. And we are trying to get colleges to enroll less students in the programs where the job placement is not as successful, and start cutting those programs, sorry, and expand on those programs where they've got high job placement statistics, so that we can move the system to respond to where the job opportunities are. But the reality is we also want to massify things. And as much as we're trying to introduce that 821, where an employer must be involved right from the beginning, you will not be able to massify that system. And therefore you will still find that many students will come into the system, and there's not yet an employer on the other hand. I must also say, with the occupational programs, even which funded by the CETAs, more and more the CETAs are demanding that there must be employers identified where the workplace experience can take place before the funding starts. So yes, the system is moving, but you are often running into a brick wall with the number of job placement opportunities. And I'm afraid that after COVID, it could even be worse, because many companies has shut down, many companies are scaling down, and the last thing that's on people's mind now, when you have to let people go, is to now get another intern to maybe come and do the work, because there will also be sensitivities about labor unions feeling interns are replacing full-time workers. So I think in a country like Germany, where employment is very high and there's a long culture, it's much easier. But I can begin to see a mind shift. And I must just say, from the region where I operate in, which is the Western and Northern Cape, we are getting tremendous support from the Premier, the previous Premier, Alan Zeller from this province, that really took hands with the TVET colleges, although we are national competencies, to break up, to knock open the doors of industry and bring industry on board. And we have regular engagements with industry through forums which the Premier actually chairs. And that is helping a lot. And it's also a process of changing their minds. But seeing that you are all linked to the German, many German companies, I think those companies, especially your German-based companies that's operating in South Africa, do understand the importance of the role of industry. And I would really like to appeal to them to begin to take the lead and show companies in South Africa that might not have that culture, the benefit of taking interns and taking in apprentices in industry. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Cassie. Another one, the biggest issue facing all of humanity is the ecological or climate crisis, particularly poor people who didn't cause it but suffer from it the most. What role does TVET play in addressing this?
This is obviously important for us, because in many colleges in the Western Cape, for example, already they have introduced the concept of green energy and training students in green energy. There's also a very strong collaboration between some of the TVET colleges in the Western Cape and CPUT, the Cape University of Technology, which has a whole department looking at the green energy, as well as University of Stellenbosch, where there's a strong partnership, and that deals, for example, water purification and things like that. And even where we are beginning to look at new building designs of colleges, the whole concept of green energy and is beginning to play a critical role in the improvement of those plans. I can't see, we're building a number of colleges now, but I can't see that any college that's been built now will not, to a large extent, make sure that the design deals with things like solar energy, and even if necessary, wind energy. But we are training people, and we are supplying people for those industries. But as you know, we had a little bit of a challenge in our country, which is now beginning to be unblocked, that there was not a lot of support for those industries to actually grow. And a lot of them that took initiative in the beginning struggled a lot. And I think it probably had something to do with the monopoly that Eskom had and the protection of Eskom at that point, probably. I'm not sure. But it's been changed lately.
Thank you very much, Cassie. I don't have any more questions for you that I can see. Thank you once more. Oh, okay. Sorry, I did miss one once again. Okay, so this one says the challenge is that the TVET colleges are not very willing to partner or work with private accredited service providers. Also, that it is not easy to register as private community colleges. As such, we are stuck with the qualifications that we are accredited on.
As I said, especially community colleges are still in the infant shoes, but my office also plays a role in linking up community colleges with other partners. So if there's people or NGOs that has a need for that, I think I've left my details on the last slide, which we'll probably distribute. And please contact our office. I've got a director in my office for CET colleges that is specifically one of the issues is partnership development and assisting the CET college with that. I hope that answers it. So please contact us. We can facilitate, but we must remember, especially when an NGO comes on board with a TVET college, there must be benefit for both. We mustn't think that your TVET colleges has just got all these resources. Everything is linked to a certain program. But I'm sure there's colleges that's willing to share if there's a benefit for them. Yeah. And some colleges are more open than others, probably.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Cassie. That is it in terms of the Q&A. I will release you. And we are going to have, so you can turn your video off. Thank you. We're going to do another poll now. So get ready to share your thoughts on that one. And Ilshan, if you're ready, you can cue it up. So there's the poll. It started the countdown. As per before, please tell us which topic you found most valuable. And we're starting to talk about the way forward now, because the next session will be a plenary to start talking about that. But please fill in the poll quickly. Okay, somebody started. I'm going to keep the timer going until we have a decent number of people that have voted. So fast fingers, please. And let me know once you're done, so I know that people are doing this. Awesome, Dambisa, thank you. Okay, 36% people have voted. We'll leave it on for a bit longer. Thanks, Michelle. Tabsila, thank you. 48% of the people have voted. Vanessa, thank you. Okay, we'll just keep it going for a little longer. With 58% people have voted. We'll let it run to the 2-minute mark, Ilshan. Caroline, thank you. Okay, 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Awesome. 69% people. Okay, so which topic did you find the most valuable in this afternoon's session? It looks like the one that we just finished on the stigma of vocational skills training, 59%, and then the community development, and then the VST moving forward post-COVID. Okay, has this conference improved your understanding? Wow, okay, I think we've done our job. 100% say of the people that responded say they found it's improved their understanding. Would you like to participate in more dialogues on VST in the future? 93%. Oh, Ilshan, we have our work cut out. And which sectors would you like to hear the most from in the future? Okay, the majority is industry, followed very closely by nonprofits, and then government, and then academic institutions. So that's where we are. It looks like this is indeed, as we thought, an important start to an important dialogue, which needs to continue. We will use this feedback that you've given us in planning what we do next and what our role becomes in this. We started off looking to get educated ourselves, and then we realized we needed to share this with other people and get the conversation going on wider than just the AMY Foundation. So thank you very much for your feedback. We will now have an open plenary session. Let me put my video back on. I'm tired of hiding. We will have an open discussion on the way forward and any ideas you would like to contribute to that. And basically how we're gonna do this is whatever thoughts you have regarding what must happen next, what would you would like to see in terms of collaboration, in terms of thought, in terms of partnership, in terms of engagement further. I would like to for us to start having that conversation. How we'll work this is that if you would like to say something, you can raise your hand and Ilshan will unmute you so that we can hear your thoughts. We don't have a long time to do this, so if you can please just keep it brief and to the point. If you have a suggestion, a question, or anything of the sort that you would like to talk about. So this is just an open discussion. Ilshan will note who raises their hands, and we can see how we answer in terms of the way forward. So please, if you have something you'd like to contribute, just raise your hand and we can have a discussion. Oh, dog. Just as soon as. Okay, is there anybody that would like to? So I can't see the hand raising. I don't know if Ilshan, you can. Otherwise, if there isn't anybody, that means we've done a really great job and fulfilled our mandate. And it's clear what we need to do next. We need to organize another one of these in the future and invite the right people in the room. So no hands, Ilshan says. It looks like we're done. It looks like we've done our job. Okay, so maybe what I should say is that in terms of our commitment as a foundation, we will definitely, it's quite obvious that we need to continue this, we need to facilitate. It's not just about us anymore. So we will definitely do that. And we will let you know when. We are planning to put out a survey after this, just to gauge what people thought of this conversation and what people think we should do next. The poll was helpful, definitely, but I think a survey can maybe elicit more thoughts from everybody that's participated today. So since nobody raised their hands, what I would like to do is thank everybody that was involved in putting this together. We mentioned earlier, I think Kevin did, that we received funding from the German government, from AGYI, the African German Youth Initiative Innovation Fund. So I would like to thank the German Cooperation, African Union, WESA, who were the implementation partners for AGYI, have been with us throughout. We've been meeting weekly with them to organize this. And I can't even begin to explain how well that relationship has developed, and how I hope that it continues into the future, even post this project. It's been wonderful working with WESA, and you know, when we started and I heard about WESA, I thought it was still the Wildlife and Environmental Society, and I didn't understand what they had to do with this, but I clearly understand now, and very, very grateful to them for the assistance that they've made to us. They also made available to us their IT support group, Common Sense, all the way from Germany, who helped us equip us to be able to run a conference like this, because we didn't know, so it was a steep learning curve, and they held our hands. We did training sessions. They're here. They're supporting the event live as well. So thank you very much to Wolfgang and Nella, and to my colleagues at the AGYI Foundation who have been supporting this effort. One in particular, and I'm going to put her on the spot. I hope she doesn't mind. Ilshan, would you like to put your video on, please? So I am the co-host. You see me, but you didn't see Ilshan. I know you've heard from her a lot in the run-up to this, and I would just like to acknowledge her for all the hard work and to apologize for all the stress and pressure that I put her through. And just thank her for how well this has run, and how efficiently and how well we've worked together. Ilshan, thank you very much. I'm doing this publicly because I tell you all the time that you're doing a great job, and I just wanted to tell you in front of everybody that you're fantastic, and what you've done is awesome. Thank you very much for all the hard work you put in.
Thank you, Pumi, and it was a pleasure working with you and everybody else, but especially you.
Thank you. Same here. So we will close the conference now, but before we do that, I am new at the AGYI Foundation. I don't know if a year and 2 months is still new, but I'll call myself new still. And I got to know that 2 days ago was the anniversary of Amy Beale's death. She died on the 25th of August in 1993. And I just thought it would be fitting for us to close this conference with a short video on her, and also on why we exist as a foundation. It's an old video. The pictures don't look, no, it looks like something that was done in the 90s, but I don't care. I would like this to be a moment of silence for her, for giving her life, so that we would be able to help so many young people in so many ways over the years and over the decades. So if you could just indulge us, please, for 5 minutes as we play this video before I properly say goodbye. Thank you, Ilshan.
In 1993, on the eve of democracy in South Africa, Amy Beale, a Fulbright scholar from Stanford University studying the role of women in South Africa, was stoned and stabbed to death by a mob of young men in the township of Gugulethu in Cape Town. After the 4 young men were convicted and sentenced to 18 years in prison, they applied for amnesty through Archbishop Tutu's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Determined to honor their daughter's commitment to South Africa and its people, Amy's parents, Peter and Linda Beale, participated in the Commission's hearings. In an act of forgiveness, they chose to support amnesty for the youths and the men were set free after spending 5 years in prison. After their release, 2 of the young men, humbled by the act of forgiveness, chose to dedicate themselves to the development of underprivileged youths and reached out to the Beals. Today, they continue to work with the Amy Beal Foundation, helping to ensure a brighter future for thousands of children.
Thank you very much, everyone. I wish you well for the rest of the day. You will be hearing from us in terms of the survey and also in terms of what happens next. I would just like to leave you with the thought that today we looked at a problem, but we also looked at some potential solutions. There was a divergence of views. What I would like to see happening and what we as an organization would like to see happening is a coming together of these views, because I think there is potential for many people that were on this conference to start working together and coming together for the benefit of our young people. So with that, I would like to thank you again for your participation and thank you again for your time. And I look forward to further engagement. Just to go back to screen share, I have my email address on this slide, pumi@amyfoundation.co.za. I'm very happy for us to be on this journey together. So please contact us. Please let's keep in touch. And thank you and enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.